Hello, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Inland Wetlands Commission of Monroe. It is January the 24th, and it is currently 7:02. The first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission and staff present here tonight. Where's my list? That is my old list, yes. It is. Okay, starting to my right, Clark Ingress. Next here is Jim Stewart, who is a professional engineer. What else are you? And a licensed land surveyor. To my left, my name is Jason Grady. To the left is Jeff Shamus, who is a certified ecologist, a professional wetland scientist, and a certified soil scientist, state of Connecticut. To his left is Lois Spence, our secretary. Jeff Shamus is also our vice chair. To Commissioner Spence's left is Donna Straczynski, who is our Inland and Wetlands Coordinator and Land Use Coordinator. Next is Scott Schatzeline, who is our town engineer, licensed professional engineer, land use director, town engineer, and an inland wetlands agent. And of course, as always, the lovely Rebecca Wood, who is our recording secretary, is in attendance tonight. We appreciate her every day. Sit on the record, it's got to be true.
That's right.
Before we start, I am obliged to read our mission statement and how the meeting will proceed. The objective and the purpose of the Inland and Wetlands Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland and wetlands and watercourses within the town of Monroe. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have an applicant make a representation or a presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. The commission will then review town staff and other independent comments. The meeting will then be open for public comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair or the commission. After any and all comments pro, in opposition to, or of a general nature are made, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for new questions unless new material is entered in as evidence or testimony during their response. Please keep any of all comments, pro and con, specific to inland and wetlands related matters. Other applications that do not have a public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. Our agenda is up here on the front table in green, should anyone be interested. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
I don't have any either. I don't have any.
No changes, fantastic. All right, moving on to our next order of business, which is the minutes of our January 10th, 2018 meeting. I will entertain a motion regarding these minutes.
Move to approve with some changes.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Spence. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Gingras. Comments or changes?
Okay, on page 1, under the corrections and changes, the very bottom paragraph. Now, Jim is here now, so he can qualify this, but he made a comment regarding not a beaver dam. It was just a wall type of a thing that looked like or behaved like a dam. You talked about having one on your properties. No, this was the previous one. We corrected the minutes because they said you had it on your personal property, which I know you did not.
Yeah, I don't have any beavers.
Right. Well, it wasn't even, we didn't
Or
mention
dams.
beavers.
Or
But there was
dams.
something that you work with, I believe, that is considered a dam. It came up.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
So that's,
But it wasn't beaver related.
but it wasn't beaver related, so I
No,
think
no
just,
beavers.
That was the detention
Oh, so
basin.
get,
Yeah, that was
just
considered a
cross out
dam,
beaver,
yeah.
I think. and put in the,
Okay.
and that would,
Got-
sorry for the long diatribe. Okay.
We're used to it.
On page 5, under enforcement, under the discussion column, about 4 lines down, 5 lines down, the proposed regulated area markers will be relocated again along the stone wall in lieu of a conservation easement. I just thought that might be better understand if we put the borders of the conservation easement.
So you wanted to say the proposed regulated area markers will be relocated,
Along the stone wall in lieu of the borders of the conservation
the
easement.
borders, okay,
And it says the same thing, it just is a little bit more
clearer.
for those people that are dense like me. All right,
And that was under IWV 2017-06, 265 Turkey Roost.
right,
Yes, just double checking.
okay. And on the top of page 6, under the conditions for approval, I read these a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just having to try
Good.
to remind myself. So, erosion control and management of invasive plant species, and the addition that the area shall be mowed once a year seasonally for a period of 3 years to, for some reason, the word plan is in there. I think we meant to say to keep the invasives at bay while the plantings become established.
Okay. So a period of 3 years to keep invasives.
And that's it. Do you want this?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Page
you.
3 of 10, sorry. The top, the vote 410 would be 400, I guess, 1, 2,
Are you
3,
on-
4.
The minutes of January 10th?
Yeah, wrong ones.
I'm on the wrong ones?
Yes.
And I believe
Okay.
that was corrected.
Okay, sorry,
Yes. So, thank you for
sorry.
that. All righty.
I'll move
Vote.
down a chair.
Back to the end of the line.
Do we have anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Good.
So we have the motion by Commissioner Spence, second by Commissioner Gingras. All those in favor of ratifying these minutes, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Staying.
1 abstention, Commissioner Stewart. Motion carries.
So,
Awesome. Okay, the next order of business is the section reserved for general public participation. This is a period of time reserved for publication not related to things coming up on this agenda. Seeing none, moving right along. We are going to attempt our annual organization meeting again. The election of officers, I believe we will table again.
You know, I did do a little bit of research on that, and you don't have, you need a majority of the entire membership
we
vote,
have, yeah.
huh?
Which we have.
Which you have, yeah, so if, the only thing is there's 6 of you, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why'd I
We're missing a member, we
We're
don't
missing
have a.
members, so there's 5 of you tonight. So the majority that you have to, no, you need all 5 of you. It needs a vote of the entire membership. Wait a minute, majority of the entire membership. So if you have 7 membership,
Need 4.
majority is 5.
Well, we
So-
only have 6, so we
What?
still have, we only have 6 members on the commission at the moment.
But it's
So
from
we still
your,
have
it's
5.
from your commission.
Yes.
So
Right.
you have 5, so what I'm getting at is, you
If
can
you all
do it
agree.
tonight, but you have to have unanimous,
Votes.
Oh, okay.
you all have to be voting in favor or
Right.
each
It is
position?
my position that we should table the election of officers and our next item, the review of bylaws, as a courtesy to our member who's absent. I'm okay with us moving forward with our meeting schedule, because I think that's more emergent
Thank
than
you.
the other
That's a
two.
Okay,
That's a
If
good
that,
way
if
to-
everybody, I mean, that's just my opinion.
works for me.
I don't want to go ahead with election of officers in case Ross wants to dethrone me. I want to give him that opportunity.
And that's a good
I
point.
encourage
Certainly
that
have enough time.
opportunity.
You're looking for any chance you can get.
So, I mean, as a courtesy to
Well,
Ross,
legalize it.
I want to give him the opportunity to vote and to participate in the election of officers and in the review of the bylaws.
Yep.
Okay, so
Agreed.
table.
If that's okay, so I want to table those two, and if I'm okay with going ahead with the meeting schedule, because I know that's more emergent, and if,
And remember that in order to vote, you all have to have reviewed the bylaws. So Jim, I think you're the last one that needs, if we gave them to you in your packet. you need
Yeah,
to
oh
review
yeah,
those.
they're beautiful.
did you get the latest update that was issued at our last meeting?
Was it mailed?
No, I don't believe so.
Then I did not. Unless you put it in my newest
no.
package.
Did you guys hit?
No, you didn't, you
I
said
did.
you made
Wait,
one up
the-
in color.
We're talking about the meeting schedule?
No, no, the
No, we're
bylaws.
talking about the bylaws.
Oh, the bylaws.
I want to make sure Jim has a chance to review it before our next meeting.
Okay, I will
Include it in
send
our
you
package,
the
in my
ones
next
that
package.
we,
And I'll
after,
thoroughly
I took
review
everybody's
that
thing.
before our
and
next
I-
meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I did do it.
Before we start our discussion on our 2018 meeting schedule, I would renew my plea that every commissioner make their most earnest effort in getting here at our next meeting. I know things come up, but, so we could put the bylaws to bed and the election of officers to bed. And our next meeting date is February the 7th, I believe, correct?
Well,
only if we
As it's
vote.
scheduled right now,
Yes, only if we vote on it, because it's not voted on. so
as
it's not
on our
ruled just
tentative
yet.
schedule. Well, I guess I'll renew my plea after we vote on our meeting schedule. All right, so do we have any discussion on our proposed meeting schedule that we have all received in our packets tonight?
Yes.
We've received it in the past, but we received it again
Yes.
tonight.
Just in case.
Yes,
Okay, do I hear any objections to any of the dates?
yes.
I've only got one objection.
Conflict
Is
or
it to the
objection?
date?
Well,
No, we are.
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, 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 you
Let her
didn't.
go first.
I would like to go back to February 14th, which was the original date, because I scheduled a busy night that night, and I will not be here
On the 7th.
on the 7th. And I scheduled
So there goes
around
our
our meeting
bylaw.
schedule.
There goes our bylaws and our
There would be, yeah,
officers.
that's
Yeah.
true. If we schedule it on the 7th, I would
Vote.
not be here.
And I won't be here on the 14th for February.
There goes our bylaws and
And
officers' votes.
I got invited to this
Well, no,
lovely
again, you have-
I understand.
Republican,
But it-
Republican town thank you dinner or something.
Yeah, what
For
date is that?
raises. That's on the 7th.
I thought that,
No,
that's
You
not
sure?
a Tuesday, is it?
I wrote it, may I be wrong, but I thought it was the 7th.
I got the same invitation, but I
I
didn't
did
know that
too,
that
but-
was.
Isn't it the 7th? Or did I put
yeah, it
it?
might be,
Yeah, I
actually.
think it's the 7th, at 6:30.
All right.
So you can only go for half an hour, Jim.
Yeah, but I might be drunk.
All right, well,
No,
listen,
it-
here's where
actually,
we stand.
Let's not do it on the 7th.
Here's where we stand. So we have at least, does anybody else have any other,
Why don't we just cancel
By
that
the way, the
date?
reason why,
Oh, there we go.
the reason why we did put the 7th, just so you know,
Valentine's
is
Day?
we try to
Stagger
balance the
meetings.
meetings, because if we have it on the 14th, it's the night before the planning and zoning meeting, and then our business sometimes gets messed up, because we
and it's
can't,
too, I understand. We understand. I understand that.
that's not to say it can't be changed, but that was the reason we did do it.
If I had
Can't
had
plan
more
zoning.
warning, I would have been fine. But I
Planning and zoning
schedule
change.
things
We're
around
not
that
planning and
date,
zoning,
so.
brother.
Let's just draw a line through that day.
All right, so there's the February issue. Is there any other issue that needs to be discussed on this meeting schedule for the present commissioners?
I don't think I have any others.
Is
What
there,
about the November meeting date?
I'm okay with that.
that's fine. That's what
So
it is.
where are we on February then? Which day are you?
Well, I'm
on?
just seeing, I'm trying to get all the
Okay,
stuff on
sorry.
the table so we can discuss them.
Sorry.
Are we stuck on Wednesdays?
Yeah, I think you need to hold.
There's no
We're-
rums,
To
yeah,
get the
okay.
room
Yeah.
and everything else, yeah.
Well, even if we schedule it in advance like this, though?
You
There's
can, I
plenty
mean,
of notice.
well,
But it just depends on whether
Wait.
there might be a town council or.
Can I ask a question before we continue?
There's lots of them.
The organizational meeting has to be at a public meeting? That cannot be done as a special meeting where we can do a half-hour discussion?
If I'm remembering correctly, your bylaws say that it's scheduled for a regular meeting, the last, something about the, I forget which meeting in
It's like
December.
it's one of the meetings.
And so you're supposed to do it then, and then there's a protocol for if you don't have the right people, then it gets extended, and that's where you are.
Okay, so in the protocol, it still says it has to be a
Supposed to be a
regular meeting.
regular
So we cannot call a special meeting on a night and knock the election of officers and the bylaws out, so that way there's less conflict in that
I mean, I
February.
have to look into that, I don't think you can.
Because at this point, no matter what, we're not gonna be touching those things until at least February 28th now. So another full month.
Well, again, you don't
I
have to all
understand.
be here, you could have someone, provide their comments if
okay.
if they, you know.
All right. All right, any other discussion about our meetings?
I'll throw one out.
Okay?
That may be unpopular, but just a comment, just to get feedback on having one meeting a month instead of 2 meetings a month.
Well, the reason we don't do that is because
Statutory.
it sets us back because applications are received the first meeting directly after they're submitted to the office. So if you have 2 regular meetings, they have to be accepted by statute automatically at a regular meeting. So it gives the applicants an opportunity to do it twice a month, to have it accepted.
The other part of that is the statutory requirement of having to
Timelines.
write the timeline of the 35 days for a hearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for less
Makes-
meetings, I just don't
Yeah,
know
I mean,
that
I
it's
wouldn't
ever
argue
gonna.
with that
I
either.
don't know that it- I think when we put ourselves behind the eight
They
ball.
go on forever. I mean, they go on forever as it is. Can you imagine trying to get all that business into
Yeah,
one?
I'd be the
one
first
Well,
one to want once
just-
a month.
That's why I figured I'd throw it out there and just get feedback to find out
Yeah.
what the reasons
Yeah,
behind it.
well,
What's it?
unfortunately,
great thought.
we'd all,
Right, it
we'd
would
all
be
like
great.
that.
If we reduce our workload, we'd be having no problem.
All right.
at all.
So other than, for right now, I don't think the one meeting, because we only have 2 meetings in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
It's basically gonna be
6
6 months out of.
6 out of, half the year, basically. So while it sounds great, I just don't know that that's feasible at this point in time. So really, the only issue we have to deal with is our February the 7th meeting, which happens to be our next meeting. Whether we have it on the 7th or we have it on the 14th, we're gonna be sure at least one of our commissioners, both integral parts of our commission, obviously. We do have 2 hearing determinations tonight and 2 public hearings on the docket for tonight. How are our timelines on things that we are currently working on? If we were to cancel this meeting, does that put us in trouble for our?
No, when I figure out the timeline, it would not, they still have time.
So if you held it on the 14th, what's the concern with P and Z?
It's not,
Well, the concern is that it's the night before, so if there's something that has to get to the commission, it doesn't leave much time to get that done and sent over to the commission, such as a referral or something like that.
That's
I mean, it's-
only.
don't
We
that's
get
try
only-
not, we try not to back,
Don't
we
get me
as a
wrong,
commission
it-
try not to back staff into a corner where they're at 2 meetings
Yeah.
back to back, and then have to also worry about getting work that's done in our meeting together and presented
The next
to
Yeah, it's hard
the
to
next
prepare
night.
for 2 meetings.
So
2
it's
nights in a
twofold
row.
there.
It can be done, though, we have done it.
It can be done, it's just really, we try to avoid it at most costs. So what are the repercussions if we cancel our February 7th meeting altogether and go to 1 meeting on February?
oh,
There,
that would be an issue. The 327 Barn Hill has time on their extension, but that would not work. They would have to go to the meeting of the 14th.
we have extensions
I understand.
available.
I don't know
I
that,
think you told me.
no, but no,
I think we'd also need an extension from Elm Street, because we had to open that within 35 days.
No, there are, hold on. So,
Sorry to
with,
put you on the spot there, though.
no, it's okay. Oh, they would have 36 days left at the 14th.
But while you're doing that, it sounds like the 14th is out. It sounds like the 14th is not a,
I mean, the 14th, I mean, having a meeting on the 14th, in my mind, for our staff considerations, I think will probably be a last resort, only absolutely necessary.
and that would be, the following week would be another meeting, is that
So
right?
they do have.
Yeah, and then it's, well,
They
no,
could,
then-
7, it's 2 weeks, that would be 2
Yeah, that
weeks.
would be
327 Barn Hill could go to the 28th.
Okay.
Without any extensions?
No, that's with the extension. They're having an extension either way, because, so,
How about Elm Street? Do we have an issue with that because of opening?
so they could make the 28th. Elm Street is,
We would just need an extension in order to be able to open it, because we would have gone past our 35 days to open.
can you give me the Elm Street?
Or is it 65 days to open?
Hold on.
you haven't even had the determination on that.
Yeah,
I know. Well, we gotta do that tonight.
So, no, Elm Street would not,
We don't have an opening date on that yet.
we don't. It has to be either a public hearing or a decision. Or, either start a hearing or a decision by March 16th. And our next meeting after,
Okay.
so that would be fine too. They would not need, if you bag.
So we don't have any time constraints now except for if we do that.
Right, and
asking
actually,
Barn
the
Hill for
only thing that
extension.
you have is probably, which are some of the violations, which would actually give them more time.
Yeah, they're not on a
Right.
statutory time.
Exactly, so, yeah, you could not have that meeting.
All right, so we have three options on the only question on our meeting schedule. We either have the meeting on February 7th, as it's marked. We move it to the 14th. So either we have it on the 7th and, at least our Secretary Spence will not be able to attend. We have it on the 14th and put staff at a disadvantage in numerous different ways.
Well,
And
And Shamus.
and Vice
Jeff
Chairman
can't make it.
Shamus wouldn't be here, or we
Mr.
go to one meeting on the 28th of February. I'll hear everybody's discussion on one of those three options. What do we think is the best?
Yeah, I'm with the majority of the commission, however they want to go with it.
I mean, as much as we want all the commissioners that are present, that can't always happen, so, if we have to go missing a commissioner, it's unfortunate, but business is business.
Well, there would be two commissioners. Actually, if February 7th is that other date, then there are other conflicts with some of the other commission members, namely you and Jim,
Oh,
if you went with the 7th. Well, it is
Yeah.
just, it's a consideration.
yeah,
if
I don't
you
know that
wanted
I
to
can
go.
attend a party recognizing me for my efforts with the party while I'm shirking my responsibility for those efforts, right?
Good point.
And I really didn't think
I
that
wouldn't
was-
have a problem doing that.
But I'm okay with the one meeting in February.
Okay, so we have one vote for the meeting, one meeting from just having the 28th meeting.
I'll go with majority, I'm fine.
So far, there's one.
Okay,
one-
I move that we
majority of
accept
one.
this list, eliminating the February 7th and 14th meeting.
Okay. So I have two votes for one meeting in February. All right, hot seats, come on. What do you think?
I'm there,
Okay.
February 28th.
All right, so all in favor of approving our inland and wetland meeting schedule for 2018 minus the first scheduled meeting in February, which was originally the 14th and now scheduled for the 7th.
And a clarification on November, it includes both?
No,
Oh,
the original date was again the 14th, but I had put down the 7th because that was a conflict with the 2 meetings at night. That's why I put that down.
Okay,
The regularly scheduled meeting would normally be on the 14th.
but we're voting to make it
and that
as
doesn't,
scheduled.
that
Yeah,
doesn't conflict
okay.
with any of the.
So I believe I have
meetings
I believe I have a motion from Commissioner Stewart. Do I hear a second?
in town. I'll second it.
A second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor of, again, voting for our meeting schedule that's in front of us minus the first February meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously for the meeting schedule as proposed minus the February 7th meeting. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you very
We have a
much. I
schedule.
doing
apologize.
so.
Okay, so that's everyone.
All right, so we are tabling election of officers, we're tabling review of bylaws until our February 28th meeting. Please all make your best efforts to attend that February 28th meeting so that we could,
I feel a headache coming on.
is that my fault? Am I putting out the headache
On the
vibe?
28th of February.
Yeah,
That'd be a
no,
lot.
that's not allowed in my regime. Okay, moving on to our next section, application hearing determinations. First up is IWC 2017-13, 94 Elm Street, Baghdadi owner, Olson representative, Wolf engineer, proposed single-family home with associated site improvements.
Okay, you guys, at the last meeting, it per statute got automatically accepted, so the clock's ticking. However, you did not determine whether it was going to be a public hearing or not. And you asked the applicant to provide a couple of answers to some questions about when the lot was created, when the structures were constructed. There's 3 structures on the property, if you recall, when the ponds were built. And they provided some information, I think it got into your packets. And there's a couple of things that were not answered, but I gotta put you on, let's see.
Can I get it, please?
So, these are all,
Hold on 1 second. So the
it would
90,
be these 2.
well, that one is what, the top one is what Ron Wolf sent us. The other ones are what Conrad did.
All right, so this is a 1970 image, clearly before the adoption of the regulations. You can see that it's this is the lot here. It's, doesn't have the ponds. Interesting is that when this subdivision, what happened was this was Big Farm, and this lot was, could you switch the, this lot was spun off of this larger lot. And when they did that, they created a deed restriction back in here, restrictive covenant, which restricted the land, and they filed on land records, but apparently didn't follow it because the next, in the next photo, let's see, 1986, which was 2 years before the adoption of the regulations, the pond is now there. So they didn't follow the deed covenant, the restrictive covenant, and they somehow built this pond back in somewhere between 70 and 86. We suspect it was soon after it was subdivided. Then in 1990, the image shows the second pond. It still doesn't show, the structures on the second pond. And then in 1995, you now can see those structures. And we have no record of permits for the structures. So we've kind of gone ahead and answered those questions for the applicant in the information that we have right in the office. So I believe you were looking for that information so that you could determine if you had to retroactively consider these structures and the pond, et cetera. So, and if you do, that's a significant activity and therefore is a public hearing. So that's, I guess, what you're here to, what we're talking about tonight, whether or not you're gonna require a public hearing, noting that, obviously during the hearing, the applicant can provide much more detail, hopefully, on your questions.
So we still have some unanswered questions, right?
You don't know if Army Corps was involved, that was
Right.
one of your questions.
DEP,
Pardon?
DEP.
Yeah,
and the water.
those, and the engineer in his email that came back to us indicated that he had no understanding of that. Apparently, this was subdivided back when different people were involved. The subdivision is dated November 1968. This was subdivided way back in '68. That was
All
another-
right,
that
so
was
this,
another
I
question.
mean, this looks like it's pretty clear that, I don't know what I can say. I mean, this is significant activity. I think it qualifies as a public
Mhm.
hearing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it would see that based on the structures that were constructed and separate from the ponds, which may have been completed before our regs were in force, it would still have to get permits with the Corps and DEP at that time. That certainly the structures appeared and likely some grading associated with that, while our regulations were in force. So I would second that.
Well, I can't make the motion, so I will entertain a motion on.
So make the motion, Jeff. I'll second.
I'll make the motion that this should go to public hearing due to significant impact activity.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Vice Chairman Shamus to move this to a public hearing, seconded by Secretary Spence. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously.
We should be able to open that at the end of February.
There we go. Next up, IWC 2018-01-R, 98 Enterprise Drive LLC, Bartoli Partner, Edwards Engineer, Site Development to construct building and storage area and remediation of IWB 2017-02, various wetland disturbances.
Okay, you may recall that this site was previously approved, and this is one of the remediation enforcement properties on Enterprise Drive that construction was started and a use was established there without the following of the approval. So they didn't follow the approval, they didn't proceed to put up the buildings that were approved, but yet they moved in and established a use. So we issued a notice of violation, planning and zoning pursued it as well, and they came before you a couple of times, if you recall, and told you that they wanted to vary from the original approval. And they finally, after some time, they've submitted an application to do so. So you now have a new application. It's a new, completely new layout. There are some similarities in the detention basin. Certainly the area from the wall, the limits of where they're going to be utilizing the property and the, between that and the wetland is, I believe, very similar, if not the same, than the original approval. And so, and I understand that, I believe that most of that work was accomplished. Let me read you the statistics on this. The overall project site is 4.74 acres. Wetlands on the property are 0.6 acres. Upland review area on the property is 2.1 acres. They are proposing no activity at all in wetlands areas, and they're proposing 1.52 acres of the upland review area to be altered. It's one commercial building, driveway, and there is some number of activities for outside storage that they're proposing, with a detention basin for stormwater quality and quantity to address those items. Again, the violation was essentially the fact that they were using it without having their proper authorization to do so.
You know what I would like to see was an existing conditions plan?
I believe that's on here, that's the, well, let's see. I think the site plan reflects the existing conditions in their existing information that's on there. I will get some clarification on that.
Okay, because it's hard to see
I mean,
what's
usually
been
they have a
done.
s-
You know, it's hard to see where the violation sits as opposed to the new,
I didn't do my
proposed.
review yet, so, I
Okay.
mean, one of the things that they're required is to have a survey, A2T2
Okay.
survey, which would be there.
alrighty. And the other thing is, there's no planting plan. There's depictions of plants on the plan, but there's no explanation, unless I'm missing it, which is possible.
There's planting buffer, it's just a
So you want
single row.
details of the plantings with a schedule.
Right. What else is on here? I did not look that carefully.
They filled wetlands,
No,
so
the wetlands are, if you look on S1, the wetlands are shaded in, and then there's a limit of disturbance line. There's actually the fill is,
but do you see the WL dash that goes right through the site?
WL.
Tell me, it looks like there's a corridor of wetlands that go right through this, based on how they drew this up.
Where, in the middle of the page?
Yeah.
Huh?
Where are you talking?
Oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm looking at, which one are we on?
That's it.
Yeah, this is the site.
Yeah.
S1, it goes right through the corner of the building,
Yeah, it's gotta be it.
it says
Oh,
wetland.
that is their, I believe that's the 100-foot.
That's not what it says.
Yeah,
It says
yeah.
wetlands limit.
You're right.
Yeah, that's
So
not
that's the
correct.
wetland offset,
That's,
or the 100-foot?
that's not correct, that's, hold on a second.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in red, so that would make it more obvious that, yeah, it does look like the entire
It goes-
site
I
is.
mean, it is 100 feet
is in
away.
wetlands, but I think,
Yeah, that's the
Yeah, 'cause it does
100-foot
line up if
upland
you look
review.
Yeah, it's
area.
100 feet away.
Let me
Well,
just
they-
It does
double
kind of
check
follow.
that.
Well, they need to tell us that.
yes, they do.
Yep, we'll get that corrected, but, yeah, it's drawn in at the 100-foot, so, and that's my recollection.
Okay.
Okay, I move to go to a public hearing due to the potential significant activity.
I have a motion by Commissioner Stewart. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. All right.
Moving along.
Subdivision report recommendation to Planning and Zoning Commission, IWC 2017-10, 327 Barnhill Road. Motino owner, Nick Clark, representative. Proposed 3-lot residential subdivision to include an extension of Robin Lane and associated site improvements. It should be noted that this is also listed under our regulated activities, public hearings, IWC 2017-10. Good evening.
Good evening. Bill Carboni, Spath, York and Associates. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. At our last meeting, we had made this proposal for a 3-lot subdivision, approximately 450 feet of road, a detention pond. At that time, the commission expressed concerns about this development. One, whether the road had to go through, the amount of development that was occurring on it. Having discussed this with staff and with our client, we would like to continue the subdivision portion of this. We are open to reducing the amount of road, reducing the amount of improvements. However, to do that, we need to get go to the ZBA in order to change some of the regulations. In order to facilitate that, we would like to get from this commission your subdivision report saying what you had said at the last meeting, in that the impacts could be reduced. We would also like to continue the subdivision portion of this, the regulated activity, in order to see what we can do and come up with a new plan for this site. This is our letter granting a continuance of the regulated activities portion of this hearing.
Okay. So am I clear in your explanation in that, as far as the public hearing on this proposed plan, we're gonna continue that? And as far as what we're handling right now, the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission, you would like us to recommend, place in our correspondence with that commission that certain things need to change, or you need, is it a
That you
variance?
feel that the impact can be reduced is what it is from this plan. As I said, I've discussed this with Scott, we've discussed it with the client, and we would like to pursue that.
So you want less road, but the same improvements, is that what you're saying?
No, certainly no less road. It will be less lots also.
Less lots.
Yes.
But without seeing what it is that you might propose with fewer lots, how can we make a recommendation?
Well, all you're saying is that you're giving not a favorable or recommendation regarding the subdivision as submitted.
So you would like us to say basically what we said to you last month? Is that,
Yep.
am I hearing you
Yes.
correctly?
Yes.
That you would like us to reiterate what we told you,
Yes.
how we felt about this?
And put that in a report to the,
And you don't want us to consider any of the approval of the regulated activity that you had proposed?
that's correct. Now, you got to remember, we have to come back to this commission when we come up with a plan for whatever it is, depending on what is allowed. So we have to come back to this commission. It will be just with a project that has less impact than this one.
Okay.
So, again, just so I'm clear in my mind,
It's
what
slightly,
you have in mind that you think you might be proposing is maybe sort of what we were talking about, but in our public hearing, but that might conflict with some of the zoning stuff.
correct.
And you need them to okay what conflicts so that you can come back to us with something more in line with what we're looking
The
for.
ZBA to allow that so we can come back with a project that has less impact, yes.
So if I'm hearing this right, you're looking for,
You're throwing us a curveball
It's
today.
very unique.
right,
There's a unique
you're looking
situation.
for the commission to provide I don't want to say a recommendation, but a letter to P and Z, a
Comment.
comment letter to
It's
P
act-
and Z.
It's actually a negative referral.
Yeah.
Right,
negative
it's,
spell.
right, to say that the applicant needs to provide alternatives to demonstrate further avoidance, minimization, and mitigation for the project. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, in other words, if an applicant comes before you and with a subdivision, and you're doing a subdivision referral, typically what you do is you say, hey, you do what you did. You say, we'd like to see fewer lots and minimize the
Right.
impact there. The applicant has a choice to either listen to what you're saying and try to accommodate that, because they know that when it gets to P and Z, your word is, that's not gonna be taken lightly. They're gonna read that and they're gonna say, well, inland wetlands has an issue with that, and didn't you address it? In this case, they're acknowledging that, and what they're gonna do is, they're gonna use that referral before it even gets to P and Z. They're gonna go to ZBA and use that to help make their case before ZBA, which, if they're successful, will give them the opportunity to definitely reduce.
So, but from a standpoint of not closing the door on our action on that,
Your
for that
action,
referral,
you
once
are,
we issue a referral letter, is that it?
your action is the referral letter for the subdivision.
Right, and then, so it needs to say that, as you said, it needs to
That
be.
you don't like it
that-
the way it's presented and you want it reduced.
Right, there needs to be alternatives, it needs to be
Yep.
reduced.
And then planning and zoning gets that, and they would have, eventually, theoretically, they would get that, they would have the final say, and usually, there's an understanding, typically, there's an understanding between planning and zoning and in the wetlands, which I believe there is for the town. They would have a tough time approving something that you have a negative referral on the lot layout. Typically, they would either deny or kick it back. That's why it's highly recommended to an applicant, hey, you're before the commission right now, you really should address this within the wetlands right now. But per our discussion, he's being transparent, and he's saying that he actually can use the negative referral in this case to go to ZBA and make a case that, hey, if you grant a variance, I could actually greatly reduce the
Yeah, understood.
the impacts.
Okay, so can we ask some questions in the meantime?
Sure.
One of the things that struck me is that this might be a perfect, well, I don't know how perfect, but it might be a good opportunity to look into a conservation subdivision where the area required for each lot is drastically reduced in exchange for larger conservation pieces. I don't think P and Z has any, they mention it in their regs, but they don't have anything spelled out. This might be an opportunity for you to help them spell something out so that I would be very happy if you could just keep the activity confined to the area between the two lobes and not try to get all the way up the hill, so to speak.
Confine it to this area.
Yeah, that, and straight down, and forget that. I mean,
That's,
the detention basin makes me very unhappy.
that's already what we're discussing.
Is it? Okay.
Right.
Because all right.
We have to investigate, one of the limitations on this site is septic capacity, or suitable soils for septic. So that may be a limitation to what we're doing here, because the testing is all on the east side, and the one house that is here. We have somewhat suitable testing here. Rich Jackson, the health department, has asked for further testing in here. This area is suitable. So what we're going to do is go back, look at what is economically feasible for the client also, and come up with a new plan. Whatever that plan is, it will require a variance of most likely street frontage anyhow. And depending on what we come up with, it may be other things. But as I say, whatever we have to do, whatever we do, will come back to this commission.
I guess we should explain just a little bit more to them, because I'm realizing that it is confusing. This is one of those situations where it's an exercise in, well, it involves economics, because if you need frontage, so you have to build a road. And then it gets involved with, if you don't build a road, you save enough money where you can cut it down to a lot. And, but you need frontage. So it's like one thing's working against the other, the road's working against the frontage. So if they get a variance for the frontage, they don't have to build a road. So I think we can, as he said, we can, they can cut it back substantially, so you don't need a road anymore, you don't need a detention basin, there's a whole bunch
But
of.
what is the, maybe I missed it from the last meeting, but what's your concept? Pull the cul-de-sac all the way back and have how many lots?
There's two different concepts. One would be to pull this cul-de-sac back to this area, keeping it further away from where these lobes come together.
Okay,
And that would most likely give us sufficient frontage for 2 lots. We could eliminate the road altogether, which would, and then say, like a conservation type of lot, bring 2 driveways off of here, one to a house here and one possibly to a house here, or a house here and here, and put one of the septic systems up here where we have suitable soils. But that would require, obviously, for 2 lots, variances from the zoning regulations. But we are, depending on what we find as far as soils go, what we're going to propose. Now, if we have to do more soils testing as we did the first time, I guess we'd have to come to the commission for future soils, which is what we did in the beginning. So, right now, all we're asking for is, and I have a hard time saying this, we're asking for a negative referral. So, and then we will go on from there.
Okay.
needed a motion for that?
No, because that's deliberations. That's later on.
I mean,
This is
I
just
can't
the
do it
hearing
anyway,
part.
because I wasn't here last time, so.
Well, it doesn't matter because we're not doing that.
You were there.
It was 2 times ago?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
they were
didn't
doing
you didn't
last
talk
time.
about it
We
last
didn't visit
meeting?
it last
No.
Okay, so we're done talking about this then?
Is anybody else, anybody's have a question, anything else from the commission?
On this particular piece of it?
Yes,
Yes.
because that's all we're considering at the moment.
No.
Because we've already established an extension on the public hearing, or continuance, whatever, but Bertie
Well,
and
and actually, does that mean that, you know, when sorry, new teeth, that you'll be withdrawing the application for the regulated activity?
Right now, we're just asked for an extension, be it to whatever your next meeting is,
The February 28th.
right, or later. Depending on what we get from the other commissions, we'll determine at that time whether we want to withdraw it or modify it. But we do not ask for any action on the regulated activities.
All right, just need clarification, thank you.
anything else from the commission, staff? Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much, Mr. Colonel. We will deliberate during the deliberating time. Okay, we are moving right along. 50, IWC 2014-07-A1, 50 Cambridge Drive. Cambridge Drive, Reed LLC, owners.
Don't we have to take this off the public hearing first? And then say it's continued, and then put it back, and then table it? We'll make a motion for that? Do we have to, the
Do I have to
public
call
hearing,
it?
because we didn't take that one off of the public, like, we didn't open that up to get the continuance yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do I need to formally do that?
No, they.
They gave a letter.
Yeah, it's a-
They
Right,
did,
So we don't have to do
they gave
anything?
us a letter.
Okay, all right.
Postponed.
Sorry, just wanted to make sure.
Spath Bjorklund, representative, installation of explosion and spill-resistant storage building and approval of existing byproduct storage tanks, which were not part of the original application. This is the opening of the public hearing.
Bill Carboni, Spath, Bjork and Associates, representing Axle Plastics. This is a development in Pepper Street Business Park. Axle Plastics makes additives for plastics industry. This was approved by this commission, has been built, and now they are asking to do two things. One is to install an external storage tank, just to orient you. So the building is right in here. The entrance drive off of Cambridge Drive comes in here. This is a truck loading dock. This is the parking areas in here. They're asking to put an external storage tank structure at that point, which is spill resistant. It's a prefabricated steel structure. Looks something like this.
Sorry, I had blown it up, so, sorry. Want it smaller?
That's good enough for me. What this does is, it's about 40 feet long, 11 feet deep, 11 feet high. The structure will be placed on a crushed stone bed adjacent to the at-grade entrance to the building. The location is there. Let me get back to you can see this truck is loaded from a truck, which I'll describe its relationship to the building. It's brought in by forklift off the truck deliveries. This is the same method they get all of their deliveries. This is to augment the internal storage of the building. It's placed in this area, and then as needed, it's brought into the building. This is an at-grade loading dock. There's a 4-foot drop in this one, but here, trucks come in, either bring it into the building, or if necessary, is put into here. The forklifts will come out of the building, take it out of here, and bring it into the building the same as if it was offloading it from a truck. There is a sump in the structure that has the capacity for about 15% of the structure's capacity. Now, all materials that are brought in to Axle Plastics are come in 55-gallon drums. They are, as I said, offloaded off of forklifts. So these are not open containers. There is no process going in here. It is strictly for storage. It's the same offloading procedure as currently occurs there, and they just bring it in. The materials that at the hearing you had asked what materials would be brought into there, and it would be heptane, toluene, and isobar. Last week I submitted the data safety sheets for each one of those chemicals that are to be brought into there.
You got those with your email and sent those out to you? Because it was a big packet, so
Yeah.
you didn't. My bad.
Now, the project also, what we're requesting is approval of facilities that are already in place. Again, this is the back portion of the building. This is the detention pond. There are bioswales coming in on both points. We are requesting for the formal approval of overflow spillage tanks in this area. These tanks are basically empty, and if everything goes properly, they always remain empty. But there is a possibility that some of the processes in the building vent to the atmosphere. Rather than having it, and in the past there was a problem where some of the foam that was generated in the building vented outside in this area. What they're proposing to do, or what they have done, is take those vents, and instead of just venting them to the atmosphere, they are venting them to tanks that are, I believe I have a picture of those. No, we don't have it. A tank that looks like this, so that the vent that currently used to go out to the atmosphere will come in through this tank and then be vented to the atmosphere. Such as if they get this situations they had before where there was foam, instead of being just gaseous material, it can be deposited here. There are 3 tanks, 500, 1,000, and 1,500 gallons in capacity. And as I said, if everything goes right as it normally does, these tanks will not be used. But because of the spill that was there, which they had to clean up, they had to notify DEP, they notified the fire marshal, that was cleaned up at great expense. They don't want that to occur, so they installed these tanks then, and we're here now asking for you to formally approve it. It did not seem prudent for them to wait for this process, which has been going, on for weeks now. So we are asking also for the approval of those tanks. Do you have any questions?
How long have the tanks been there?
How long?
About 2 months.
2 months. With me are Jake Axel, the CEO of Axel Plastics. So for specifics, I will have to refer to them. About two months.
Okay.
Is there any requirement with these to have additional containment? Or is it,
These are double-walled
they're
tanks.
considered its own containment? And it's not
Right,
required
right.
as an above-ground tank?
Right, and again, they are way over-designed, but that's the way it should be done. So, and this apparently is the industry standard for this type of spill prevention.
All right, say the disaster happens that nobody wants to have happen,
Mhm.
and these tanks have now filled. How do you empty them? How do you access them? They're big tanks.
They would be pumped into what's called a tote, which is a container bigger than a 55-gallon drum. They take this tote out, they pump it out, and then they remove it from the site.
How would they get to it? Those tanks are very remote.
No, they're not.
They
Don't
aren't?
forget, when this was built,
It's a great question. Hi.
Just your
You're gonna
your
have-
name for the record, if you wouldn't
Sure,
mind, please.
Jacob Axel.
just one thing, don't forget, when we designed this, there's a fire road all the way down
Oh,
here.
that's a fire road.
Yeah.
So we
Okay,
have
so they're
access
not as
along.
remote as I thought then.
Yeah, and we've got, we put after this happened, it was very upsetting.
You had that spill here at this site.
Yep.
How big was the spill that
We
occurred?
lost 110 gallons, which wasn't a lot.
Okay.
The problem that we had was it rained.
Oh,
Yeah. And it was not, it was awful. I mean, we had a mistake. A good operator made a mistake, and, but we called DP and we got it cleaned up and they did all the right stuff. So the tank that we hooked up to that one reactor we had the issue is about 550 gallons. We put air lines outside, so if we have an accident, again, the tank would be filled. We would hook up an air pump and either pump it up from the top, or all the tanks have closed ports at the bottom, spigots at the bottom that we could pump out of also. So we could go either way. And we massively over-designed it. I mean, we
And
would
you
have to
pump them
lose
into totes that are,
totes or
how many
drums.
gallons? You don't know.
A tote would be 275 gallons.
Those are those big plastic
Yeah,
things with
like
the
your
cages.
gardener brings over when he sprays for weeds. Or we would just.
And then a
pump it
truck
into
backs it
drums.
down, the fire thing goes
Yeah.
on truck and takes it to,
We would deal with it
God
like
knows
we deal
where.
with all of the rest of our waste, which is trucked down.
okay.
Couldn't you put a pipe and pump it back into the building?
We could, from a worker exposure standpoint, that would probably be not ideal. You know, you've just had a chemical reaction, you've lost some material. To pump it back into the building and not have it contained would be less ideal. That would be an option. I mean, the
Yeah, I
room
assume
itself
it
is
would go back in
contained.
and go into a tank.
Yeah,
That's
but
all.
we haven't set things up that way. That would be an option. It's just these totes are kind of designed for it. We would bring a backhoe in to move it out, so. And this would be a real one-off. I mean, this isn't part of our operations.
How do you know you've had an overflow?
Great question. All of our reactors on waste cells, so we noticed that we would see that we are, that our yield is down. So we would notice, we would see it in the, and then our maintenance plan is to look at the vessels on a regular schedule about once a month to see if we see anything in them. But our yields are about 99%, so if we're losing anything, we would see it when we're draining the batch.
And then someone mentioned foam, so foam get discharged?
And what happened in this case was the operator overheated a wax. And normally in processing, you inert a vessel. So you push nitrogen in, you take oxygen out. You do that a couple times to create a non-flammable atmosphere. He overheated the wax and then overheated the batch, transferred the material, it was pressurized, boiling point went up, opened the vent, boiling point went down, and it foamed over. So that's what caused
So
it.
when you got 100 gallons of foam or 100 gallons of,
We had 100 gallons of liquid that turned into foam,
liquid.
that then turned back into liquid as soon as it got shot out.
okay, so as soon as it got out into the cooler atmosphere,
It turned right back into liquid.
turned back, so there wasn't an issue of having 500 gallons of foam?
No.
And it would do the same thing in these tanks, it wouldn't, it would
I would
turn,
expect this to do the
it
same thing.
would turn
yeah.
the same thing?
Yeah, because there's no pressure in the tanks.
Now, you have three tanks of varying sizes?
Yes.
These are for different processes?
So we have about 6 reactors in the facility, and they are piped individually based more. We tried to base it on roughly what we do in each process. So we have some solvent-based processes, we have a solvent-based tank. Those are our second biggest. We do what we call different oil emulsions. We have an oil-based tank. So that goes into that largest one, which is about 1,500 gallons. And the water-based tank, where the issue is the smallest at 550. But we sized it at about 5 times what we lost, which we think is a real worst-case scenario. So
Okay.
we've got a pretty good margin for error.
Now, you've got a drain in these tanks,
At the bottom,
at the
yes.
bottom.
Yes.
What ensures that that drain is always closed?
We could add a plug to it to make sure it's always locked. I mean, they're closed and
So nobody can go and just yank the handle and open them, right?
And
Or
you
it's not left open,
No,
it's cleaned and,
certainly that's a consideration. So we'll put in a safeguard to make sure they're locked. That's actually a great idea. We'll put in a lock for each one of them. Kind of disappointed I didn't think of that.
and they have a vent as well, I assume.
Yeah, they're all vented. They don't hold pressure. They're not designed to. They're designed really for this type of a situation where in the industry, they're called knockout pots. And this is what you design them. You over-design the size of them so that if you have an accident, you have a mistake, this gives you an insurance policy.
I would think you'd have these on some kind of scale, to understand the current weight. And as if material gets discharged into it, you can immediately see the difference.
They're outside and they're not stationary tanks. I mean, they're stationary tanks, but it would, aside from it being cost prohibitive for us to put them on waste cells, it would just be, I think
Or
that'd
some
just
kind
be
of-
difficult.
Some kind of meter that tells
Alarm
you
or
it's
something.
What alarm?
full,
I was- yeah,
empty,
I was thinking
or
alarm.
like a water alarm thing
Some
that
kind of
would
alarm that indicates.
immediately tell the people inside, hey, stuff's getting into these tanks, and it will.
Well, you're saying that how long is your process when you're making,
Our processes are mostly about a day.
so you would know by the end of the day
We
that
would,
something's wrong?
when we have an issue like this, we saw that it occurred. It was very evident something had gone wrong. So this is we would notice, if we lost 100 gallons, we would notice. 2 gallons or something like that, or a few grams would be a different story, but.
I just wish they weren't on that side of the building, because they're so close to the swale that leads right into the detention basin. And God forbid anything does happen, it's gonna go right into the detention basin. Why did you choose that side of the building as opposed to the opposite side where it appears to be a lot more?
Because that's where the
Open
vent line,
space.
that's where the vent lines are.
I guess that's a good reason.
I mean, it's certainly a lot better than what it was.
Oh,
Well, at
yes,
least
it's
now it's
definitely
going into
better.
the tanks, it's
Yeah.
not just,
Yeah,
Now, as far as the other, not to switch subjects, but
Sure.
the other, the storage tank.
Sure.
Is it a fire regulation that those are kept outside?
So we're storing the same materials that we have inside.
Okay.
And part of that business, we undersized our flammable storage room. And so we need a place to store materials. And this is, we don't really have any space internally inside the building anymore to do it. Fire regulations only allow us to store 3 high and even in racked space for these types of materials. So we can't really go anywhere else in the building. And these lockers are designed to store these kind of materials. So, and it's the company that builds it. This is what they do. They do different types of prefabricated hazmat buildings. It's really beautifully done. I mean, it's got a built-in sump. It's got a built-in motor so that it gets the air changes it's supposed to have per hour. We put it close to the building, and I reviewed this with the fire marshal. Kind of our rationale for it was, if we have it farther away from the building, there's more chance of a forklift getting, first off, somebody getting hurt, or a forklift having an issue. If it's close to the building, we can maintain the site much more easily. We can ensure that they're going in and out. It's a much smaller space, so there's less risk of having it outside the building. So we thought that was an ideal spot for it.
And these containers they're brought and delivered there full and sealed, and they're brought full and sealed back into the building?
Yeah.
They're not like half emptied and brought back out?
No, we're just using this for storage. So we're gonna be taking full 55-gallon drums, bringing them in, taking them off the truck, putting them in there for storage, just raw materials, and then using them in our process, turning them into finished goods, and then storing them internally in the building.
Okay, now where do these used 55-gallon drums go?
They go, we have another truck, we have 3 truck bays. We have a second truck bay that gets picked up, and all the drums go in there, and they go back to our drum supplier.
Is
And
that
the
truck inside or outside?
Truck is outside.
Okay, so the empty ones get stored in a truck that's outside.
Mm-hmm. And that gets picked up, and they recycle them and reuse them.
Now, the picture you showed us of the storage unit
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a side on it. What do
Roll-up
you,
doors.
Those
Excuse
are
me?
roll-up doors.
There's roll-up doors on it.
so how can that be explosion-proof?
It's not, explosion-proof means that the electrical within the building is non-sparking. It isn't designed to contain an explosion. It wouldn't contain an explosion because it would be a bomb shelter, if that were the case.
Mhm.
So what it's designed is, if you look at it, it's got, all the electrical that's within it is designed to be non-sparking.
Yeah.
And it also has a motor which pushes 6 air changes an hour through the building. So let's say a supplier brings in a drum, the drum leaks, the air is gonna push through and then push the solvent out, so you don't have a mixture of air and solvent vapor, which could then explode. That's the way the safety is designed. Just like in our building, none of our walls are explosion-proof. I mean, if we had an explosion, the walls wouldn't contain it. But the movement of air and the quality of the electrical that's put in helps prevent a spark from occurring.
These are the motors that operate the overhead doors.
And those are locked too, right?
I'm sorry?
Those are locked too, when you guys are done for the day? They're not left open in case somebody...
No, we certainly wouldn't leave them open, absolutely. I don't know if they're locked, but that's a very good point. We should absolutely have
I
them
mean, because,
locked.
your facility's not locked down, there's not gates or anything when you guys are done for the day.
It's all locked up, and
It is?
the alarm
Okay.
goes, yeah, every night, it's all
Because
locked
you
up,
never
the
know, I
alarm
mean,
goes on.
kids are kids, they go playing around and
Yeah,
they see something fun to
and none
play
of these
on.
materials are drug precursors, just because the rock, we don't associate it with drug precursors, so there isn't that concern, but you're right, kids are kids and you want to be smart.
Doesn't have to be a kid either.
Yeah, it could be, it
Walter
could
White
be,
going in there? I mean, is that what we're talking about here?
No,
Breaking
we
Bad
don't.
What?
I know, no, denied. Exactly. So yeah, and this is what, these guys, this is what they do. They've got a bunch of patents on it. It's a very well-made structure, which is why they get this crazy price. Sorry?
Is it bulletproof?
It is not bulletproof. Our building in Queens was, thank God, but this isn't. We had a bullet hole above in my dad's office.
Oh my God.
In the windows.
So my only question is
Yes.
that when we, I think only a few of us were here when we did this initial application, but the chemical storage was downplayed quite a bit in the initial application, and now we're, I mean, how much more expansion do we see with more of these outbuildings and tanks and, you know, a lot of the site was wetlands when we went through this initial application, and now we have more chemicals being stored outside. We have tanks for a spill that occurred to combat that, which, you know, I guess is a good thing, because now they're not rolling down that channel into the wetlands, right?
When this was originally approved, phase 2 was also approved, which would be an expansion of the building in this area, filling in the rest of that. So we don't see any more external buildings. When you get to the point where you need that much more, we'll go to the phase 2. And rather than have, you know, more storage units. It's really more economical. I mean, these are not cheap. These storage buildings are not cheap. I think there's a building, but that would be most likely the course that we would follow.
And the truth is, when we did the initial analysis, we undersized the amount of flammable storage we needed. And we recognized, so we tried, you know, can we operate more efficiently? Can we do more just in time, that kind of stuff? And then we recognized we need the space. We're not able to store what we need to store, and this building allows us to do that. In terms of growth of the business, I really hope we grow. I think everyone in town
Monroe
hopes we
hopes you grow too, for
Me
sure.
too.
For
I
sure
mean,
we
I
do.
just got my tax bill. I need to grow.
And we need you to grow,
Yeah.
because we need that bill to grow.
So,
But, I mean, it's the volume, you know, the only concern is, you know, obviously, well, I guess it was addressed. Never mind.
I mean, I think I said this when I showed up the first time to meet you guys. I'm going to be here for the rest of my career. To say that I was upset is one of the greatest understatements when we saw the material go out and I saw what it did to my land. It broke my heart. I love this place. I show up every day with this huge smile on my face because this is my building. My dad and I built this together, and this is our future. And I bring my kids up, and we absolutely love it. And I'm really proud of it. And it broke my heart to see what happened to it because we made a mistake. And so we put these tanks in to make sure that never happens again. And we're gonna make an error in a different way. But I really believe when you screw up, you gotta fix it. You gotta fix it quick, and you gotta do it the right way. And we did. We went to an engineering firm, we talked out what was the right thing to do. And on this outside building, we're recognizing that the business is gonna grow, the business is going to, our customers are growing, they're doing different things we're trying to sell to them, and this is a way to adapt to that.
I think as a commission, we can all say that we're very happy with, you know, growth and good neighbors in the town, certainly. But, you know.
You guys wanna make sure that we're doing the right thing, and you're
Yeah, I
looking
mean,
out for
and
the
then
long
now we're
term.
talking about more and more barrels of chemicals being stored outside, and yeah, great, you know, there's a great system to minimize accidents with, you know, these chemicals, but, you know, how much more do we?
It's certainly a very fair question.
Yeah, to try to piggyback on Jason, I think, provided we do approve this outside storage, if there is more that's going to be needed, I think that perhaps phase 2 is a better solution than to continually add more outdoor storage.
Okay.
Because if I had known how much chemical, that was definitely, as Jason said, that was definitely downplayed when the initial application went through. So it doesn't make us happy either that there was a spill. So
Will certainly come to us first.
Certainly will.
so That being said, if you do, and we hope you do grow, I mean, hope you flourish and do all that, but that perhaps phase 2 would be a good thing to consider at that point, and make sure the flammable room is big enough.
Certainly will.
Extra flammable. Extra,
If any of you
extra.
guys ever want to come over and see the place, if you've got questions.
From the outside, the
you're
building looks beautiful. I
Thank
see
you.
that. We drive. I've been through it. I haven't been inside, but I've been through it.
You're welcome,
Going
whenever
other
you want,
places.
Jason.
It's a gorgeous building.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would you
Anything
like
else
to
from the commission? Anything else from the applicant?
No, I think that covers it.
Thank you. Scott,
Thank you.
anything that needs to be addressed?
The only thing, I wanted to clarify is that I had recommended, really, this is fairly small. Really, most of the work is done, right? I mean, you haven't put the larger structure in the northwest, northeast corner.
Right, but that is there, it's a level area, all we have to do is bring the stone and then
And
bring,
just put it there.
and put it there, because there's no attachment other than electrical to the building, there's no piping, there's nothing.
Okay, and the tanks in the other corner are all there.
They're there,
So
the
there's no
piping to,
disturbance of the land or anything like that?
no, the piping through the building is all stainless steel.
All right, and my other question was, and I think you guys answered it in your presentation, is that normally you would see some pads put in, concrete pads that the tanks would sit on. I mean, I would imagine you get a tank of that size filled with liquid, that's a lot of weight.
Well, that's kind of that's a great point. Our plan is to never have these tanks full liquid. Our plan is to have this as a,
But when they fill up with liquid, they're gonna have a lot of weight.
yeah, and that's why we have the stone underneath it to stabilize them, so that there wouldn't be an issue. And we would immediately, if we had another incident, be pumping it out and taking care of the issue.
They are put on stone pads as a base.
All right, okay, so they're on a stone pad.
Yeah, they're not just sitting on mud.
Right, so I had originally recommended the minimum bond amount, but you don't need a bond because the stuff's already there. And the other one's just gonna be brought in place. So I'm in the process of reviewing their request for bond release or reduction associated with their initial building construction. And I'll bring that to you separately, probably at the next meeting.
I just have one more thing. Maybe it's a better question for Mr. Axel. Is there a scheduled maintenance of the tanks, like inspection and clean? I guess if everything's going well, nothing will ever be in them, so they won't need to be cleaned, right? But like, is there like a crack inspection and a leak and, whatever, gaskets?
How do you know if anything's even in them?
We would notice that we've made a batch of.
No, I know that, but
Yeah.
let's say you've gone through 2 years, you never had an issue.
No, we're checking them at least once.
How do you see whether there's something?
I'm literally, I personally am going in.
No,
was
I
going
mean,
in
is there a
every-
hatch you open up and you look
I climb
inside?
up. Yeah, there's a hatch on the top. I
Okay.
mean, one of them, luckily, I'm big enough, so I can look down into it.
Okay,
The other two, we just get up on
okay,
a
so
ladder.
there's a hatch you look inside.
Yeah, and we're checking them as part of our preventive maintenance. We're
Yeah, I didn't know,
checking them once a
there's
month.
like a formalized, like, I guess, recommended by the manufacturer, pressure test or whatever it is?
They don't hold pressure, so there's no need for pressure test, but, and they're HTPE tanks, so these are gonna last for 100 years. I mean,
So
they're
there's
not
no
reactive.
recommended inspections or?
No, because they're on pressure vessels, they aren't,
Okay.
they're not, standard,
If
process
the thing doesn't
equipment.
blow a gasket.
Are they plastic?
They're plastic,
They are plastic.
they are, which is great, because that
Is there a
way,
barrier
It doesn't
around them
rust.
so nobody can run into them by accident? Because I've seen
That-
trucks,
that's actually an advantage of having them where they are. There are
There's no road there?
There are no road there.
Okay.
The only time there'll be a road there is it's a fire.
Driving along.
There's a truck over there,
get
there's a much bigger
distracted
issue.
and-
Yeah, well,
Run
yeah,
right into them and crack 'em.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's not a paved road, that's a road that has a structural foundation, but no pavement, so
Right,
it's
right.
not visible. It's not place where you would drive.
Yeah, no one's,
These are
like,
the
oh, maybe
hatches
this
on
is
the
how to
top
get
of
in.
the tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they just screw off, and they've got little pressure relief things, and they're kind of beautifully designed so that they don't,
Poof in your face.
yeah. So they relieve the pressure, but they could hold the liquid in. So they're pretty well.
Extremely expensive.
They weren't bad. The locker was, my kid's not going to college, but
Oh, you're gonna be fine.
Phase 2 will take care of that.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Well, actually, I had one more. Would it be,
Sure.
we talked about alarms. Would it be possible or prohibited to alarm these things so that you knew instantly if they were being used?
Float on the inside.
So we've talked about, like, we looked at some, like, alarms. You generally have to get electric in there, and then that concerned us on how we would do the electric. Let me,
Well, could the vent part, before you got to the tank, if the vent were somehow alarmed, since that's leading to the tank, but previous to the tank? It's
No,
just that
I
thought
definitely
that, you know,
I see what you're getting at. It's a good point. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but can I think about it, and we can put our heads together and see what we can come up with?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
And like I said, you guys are welcome to stop by whenever you want. Lois, you're welcome to.
Thank you.
You'd love the plantings. We're adding more. No, we're doing it for a long-time employee. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, so
Close.
am I jumping ahead?
No,
No, no.
well,
We gotta close
We have
the
to
hearing.
close the
I
hearing.
thought you were,
Yeah, I was gonna solicit public comment,
okay,
right?
I'm sorry.
That's what I'm supposed to do, right? Is that what you're
Yes.
telling me to do?
Yes,
Relax. Relax. I was eating chocolate. You must know. For the record. Okay, so now in the time of our public hearing, I will see if there's any comments from the public of, I forget the order,
In
of a
favor.
general, and,
In favor.
say that again?
In favor.
In favor of this application. Your name and address,
Yeah,
Mr.
Is it all
Sharada.
right?
Come on up.
No,
just us.
Yeah, my name is Tom Soretta, 5 Shawnee Lane. I'm the property manager for Karuba, and we're right next door to where this is going. And I have a couple of questions, but one curiosity. These 3 tanks, if you have a spill like you had, foam to liquid, how does the liquid go from the floor to these tanks? How do you get them in the tank? How does it go?
so,
Yeah, sir. Mr. Shredder, I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, I'm just looking at.
Right, I understand, just, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you asked the commission and they get
Oh,
out
I
to
see.
respond when you're done. So if you want to give us your questions or
I'm just-
comments, and then they
That,
can,
yeah, that's,
respond.
well, that's not why I'm here, but I'm just
Understood.
curious. How does it go into these storage tanks, these
Okay.
overfill tanks?
all right, was that the only question that you had? How it works is you give us all your questions, and then after you're done,
Okay.
they can respond.
That's
Okay.
that's a curiosity.
All right.
What I'm here for is, what are the dimensions of these tanks? Now, they're gonna be piggybacked? They're gonna be one on top of another? Are they 5 by 7? Are they 12 feet high? Because from our second floor, we see everything over there, from the second floor of a building. We don't wanna look at that. So will it be enclosed?
They will have an opportunity to respond, but if I may be so bold, the tanks are already there.
The tanks are there now?
Yes,
Are they enclosed?
they are,
Can you
I don't
see
know,
them?
they are there.
I didn't see that, I took a ride over, but I didn't see that, I saw there's an enclosement over there, and I want to know, so the tanks are already there, they're not coming, these tanks?
Tanks are there.
Tanks are there, so they must be enclosed, that's gotta be an enclosement over there. That's what we were
Either
concerned
that or
about.
they're well hidden.
It doesn't show on the plans that whether it's enclosed or not, it's just that they're round tanks on the outside of the building.
There's three different tanks,
Right.
Right.
and 3 different, so they're not together
So
in
you
an
see the red
enclosement.
dots at the bottom
Yeah, I
of the
see the
screen
red
there?
dots, they look
That's-
like they're about 10, 15 feet apart, or maybe more.
They're just pretty small.
Okay, so they're not, I just want to know what the height is on
So
them.
that, I can't answer those questions, but I can say that if you're looking out your second story window and you're concerned about seeing them, and you're not seeing them now, then your concern is probably.
Well, we're not there yet. I mean, we're not second floor. When I went up, you can see our second floor from his building. From where that whole back, you look up, you see our second floor. There's no, I don't know how much foliage is gonna be there once I'm sure there's
Okay.
gonna be some. First floor is out, but the second floor, yeah, you can see right to the building. You know.
Okay, so your question is the dimensions of the tanks?
Dimensions
Okay.
of the tanks,
So,
and they are there, and are they covered? Because,
Okay,
because I looked over there, and I thought they were going there, so maybe they're covered with an enclosement, I don't know.
okay,
Okay?
thank you, Mr. Strader, I
All right,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
I will, offer, I'm sorry, should everybody does comment, then they can respond after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, is there any other comments?
from the public.
Yeah, just hit them all at once.
In
Any other
favor
comments
or
at all?
against?
about this application from the public?
Pros or cons?
Okay, pros, cons, or in a general nature of? No thanks. Okay, the applicant has an opportunity to respond.
These are vent pipes that come out of the building off their batch inside. They are plumbed into the tanks, and then there's a vent pipe going out. So if this material, foam, liquid, whatever it is, it goes in as a deposit in the tank, it's
So what you're
permanently
saying is
plumbed.
if there's a spill or an incident like there was before at one of these reactors, the byproduct is brought to these tanks via pipes.
Right,
It doesn't free flow
No, it's
the
hard,
tanks, it goes into a pipe.
maybe hardwired, but hard plumbed into the tank where it's deposited, and then the vent goes out. As they said before, you open the hatch and either pump out the top, or you can open the ports on the bottom to clean that.
Okay.
The tanks are 8 to 12, obviously there's 3 different sizes. They range in height from 8 to 12 feet, 6 to 8 feet in diameter. They are double walled, so you're not seeing really the tank, you're seeing the secondary enclosure, but as I said, they are there. As far as visibility, when the leaves come back out, the west branch of the Pequannock flows through this area right here. It is heavily treed and will not be visible during 9 months of the year.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, that you said they range in height from 8 to 12 feet and in diameter from
6 to 8.
6 to 8 feet, and they're made of a plastic material. And what color are they?
White. And I think the smallest one, I'm just thinking, I'm 6'4", so the smallest one's gotta be about 4 feet by, or maybe 6 feet by 4.5, 5.
Okay.
And there's nothing around it, there's no plants or vegetation?
Oh, we got plants everywhere.
No, but I mean, like around, so
Like
you have
even-
these tanks, and then is there like like vegetation
No,
screening,
it's
or?
the side of the building, we've got different pads for our air. I mean, this is the kind of the utility side of the building, so we've got our air compressor there, we've got our heat exchangers there, we've got,
Mhm.
you know, that's that side of the building. But he's also, I mean, sorry, I'm supposed to address you.
Yes, please.
The gentleman's building is also about, I want to say, what, 10, 15 feet taller than mine? He's looking kind of like that.
And it's
I'm
also,
a lot lower than they are.
the base of the building, the first floor elevations of his building is about 10 to 15 feet higher, then he's got a higher building on top of that, so. But even the vegetation that is along the river, none of this was touched during construction, and there's mature trees in there, so.
And I assume the tanks are well below your height of your building.
Oh,
correct?
yes.
Your
Oh,
building
yes.
is-
Yes. And it is a white building with white tanks.
Are they mixed in within the mechanicals?
The mechanicals
There's a slide
are
right
kind
here.
of
Let
up
me see if
there,
I can-
where they show different concrete pads, so they are. So there's like a.
Oh, there they are,
There's
okay.
concrete
Yeah.
pads.
There, an air compressor there, so there's a whole bunch of different mechanicals over there.
No, this is a concrete pad for a door, but these are various.
Got blueberry bushes, it's beautiful.
Nice.
Deers love it.
Okay,
Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you. Is that, anything else? Okay. So we can close the public hearing, 50 Cambridge Drive. Moving right along to our enforcement section. There is no notice of violation discussion tonight. There is a remediation submission, IWC 2017-11, 4 Maple Drive, O'Keefe, unimproved activity in wetland area and within 100 feet of an upland review area. Violation IWE 2014-01, submission review. And I believe, oh yes, we have received a letter from the, looks like the engineer, yes?
Yes.
Excuse me, folks, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you so much. Okay, where are we with 4 Maple, which is getting to be as old as my youngest child?
You have another letter, request letter?
Yeah.
Yes, you want me
Is
to
she
read it
getting
into the
Yeah.
record? Okay. This is from Spath Bjorklund and Associates Incorporated to us saying, please be advised that we are currently developing responses to comments as appear in your review letter dated 1/13/18. It should be noted that our office did not receive a notification of the meeting date until 1/9/18 and require additional time to prepare. We have met with the client this week to formulate a strategy and anticipate that we will be in a position to appear at the regularly scheduled inland wetlands meeting on February 7th or 28th, whichever comes first, or last. That was my own comment, sorry about that. If we can be of any further assistance in this matter, please do not hesitate to contact our office. Very truly yours, Beth Bjorklund Associates. David Bjorklund, signature.
So what was, last time they're all blended together here. So last time we tabled it because they just didn't come, right? Or did they say they're still
It was just
reviewing?
tabled.
Yeah, what happened in this time is my comments that I did, which were done right before the last meeting, and, excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze.
It was inside.
Last
I sent my comments out, and I sent them to the property owner. I usually copy the engineer, and I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't copy the engineer on it. And apparently, the property owner didn't give it to the engineer. So that's apparently why they weren't ready. They didn't have enough time. By the time they got the comments, wasn't enough time to address them. If you recall, the comments were really along the lines of what's been proposed doesn't even comply with the zoning regulations. So we were
But we're still talking about, I mean, they still had, they're saying here that they got your comments on the 9th. This is the 24th.
They're saying that they got the information of,
The information they got on the 9th.
do you have it, please, that file? We have a profile. Yeah, so, I might tell you what my comments are.
I mean, we're not building Shea Stadium here.
Let's see. Where are my comments?
No, no, no.
This is going on forever, so help yourself.
You guys should have my comments in your packet. Do you have those?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for them now here, but what's the date on them?
Your letter,
Date?
according to
You should have comments in the date.
Mr.
would be on the
Bjorklund's
bottom.
letter, your letter was dated on the 3rd,
January 3rd.
All right, so
and
my,
he got him on the 9th.
yeah, okay.
But he
So you got him
never,
6 days later.
Okay, but he's not here, so what are
well,
we?
his engineer was here.
Oh,
No,
okay.
He's not.
he got, that's not the case. Mr. O'Keefe got it and he never sent it to the engineer.
Oh, so
No, that's not what he's saying. Our office did not receive the notification meeting date until the 9th.
Right, the notification of the meeting, not the comments.
He's not addressing the comments in this letter.
But the meeting date was
Are you
scheduled.
looking at the right letter?
Yeah,
Hold on one
yeah.
second.
No, this is what he said. The office did not receive the notification of the meeting date until 1/9. The
Unless they
meeting date
didn't
has
write
been
the
set in
letter
stone
the
since
way that they
last year.
meant to write it. Unless they meant
Yes,
comments.
that they could very well be.
It says here, the
Within
first,
that.
please be advised that we are currently developing responses to comments as appear in your review letter dated 1/3. It
Okay.
should be noted that our office did not receive the notification of the meeting date. All right, so I can only assume they meant they didn't get the
Right.
comments until the 9th. Well, whatever. So, I mean, I guess we have to give them to the next meeting.
So they get a gift of a month.
You know, I mean, regardless, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they don't have the response
I
anyways.
mean, you don't have to, but usually if you have an engineer in front of you and they're saying, look, we
Okay.
have the
Okay.
job.
I
and
mean,
we're working on it."
they're working towards the end, so.
Yeah, Bill Carboni, Spath, Bjorklund. One of the comments requested is a verification of the wetlands. So this is very difficult to do in the time that we have. They've also asked for a landscape plan, which we are in the process. O'Keefe has retained a soil scientist who will also prepare a landscape plan for that adjacent. But this takes more time than was available to us, especially,
I understand.
that's,
And I appreciate you being here. It's just that you can understand that this is, I mean, it's not, these issues have not just started being addressed on the 3rd of January. Well, maybe on the 3rd of January of a
Yeah, well-
different year.
to us.
Right, to you
Yeah,
guys, I
right.
understand. Okay, so
So we're
Do we-
asking for more time to
do
prepare.
I need
the
a
information.
motion to grant an extension to our next meeting, which is now 2/28?
Before we, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, you can.
If I have comments, when do I say like, if I have comments on the site plan that's been submitted? Because if we wait,
If,
then it could go to the following meeting after that, if they don't address it.
This is a remediation. It's not statutorily driven like an application is. So you don't have like 35 days, or you have to finish the hearing and all this stuff. You're here, you're the engineer representing the applicant. It's more of an informal process. Ask your questions now. He's standing here. If you have additional information or things that you want to clarify or ask him to do, I think that would help the process
Yes,
along.
right.
Sure. It should be pretty simple. So one of the comments I think that was brought up by Scott was about the soils report, which I saw you went back and you got Cynthia Rabinowitz's original soils report for the
Right.
site.
And they're in the process of updating that,
Okay,
which is kind of hard in the winter, but to the extent we can, we'll review it.
okay,
what
so,
it
so my, yeah, all right, so I saw that that was submitted and that there still might be some outstanding questions. My comment was in looking at the site plan and seeing her delineation done in 2015, was basically to have her or someone else either update the line or for her to review the information and to, certify the accuracy of your depiction, saying, yes, I did this and this is, substantial.
Now, it was surveyed by Tracy Lewis. So all she's gonna do is verify that the wetlands have not changed and,
That's all we, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, something
because-
from her, not from,
right,
because right now we have something from Spath Bjorklund saying, we reviewed everything, this is what we believe was done, which is fine, but we should get something from
yep.
either Cynthia or unless the soil
No,
scientist is doing
she has
something.
been retained and
Yeah, okay.
this is what was discussed this week.
Because what I was pointing out was that if you look at what they provided, it looks like they filled some wetlands in this, in the corner of the property. So I'm assuming they're clarifying that.
Yeah, go up behind the stone wall, you mean? Are you talking about that area?
Southeast corner of the property.
Southeast, well, the corner? Corner?
Oh, yeah, I think that's what you were talking about.
Like down by wetland flag?
6, 7, 8, 9?
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my question, Ed, and that is, flag number 18 just kind of ends in the middle of nowhere. Are we to assume that the contour line from there continues down to the property line?
The contour line or the
There's
wetlands?
a contour line, if you go to a flag 18, of course, we're on the wrong
Yeah, right.
wrong map at the moment. If you go to flag 18, it just ends in the middle of the property and it doesn't continue anywhere. There is a contour line that goes perpendicular to that, and I'm wondering if we're supposed to assume that that is the edge of the wetland because there's no more flagging from there on.
I would just tack on to that, instead of asking, kind of leaving it open as assuming, when you're talking to the soil scientists, that the wetland line should continue to the property line or to where the wetland is on the property. It might be 1 or 2 flags more, but
But this is the middle of January.
I just did a delineation today.
Is it, all right,
It's not.
even with
it's-
frozen
it-
ground?
Yeah, but a lot of the times, the wetlands, depending on the makeup of the soils, you could still, I was able to
You can get the color.
I was able to. Yeah. Uplands would be tough, but the wetlands are easier. But you could still see persistent vegetation and other features.
Also, as long as we're on that mode, kind of running along the wetland line, but not really, is a dashed line. It's a long dash, 2 shorter dashes, and a long dash. It's not defined on the legend, and it doesn't really follow the wetland flags. I'm trying to figure out what that line indicates.
I don't have this in front of me.
Do you have this? Do you
Say
have
that
this
again?
on-
I wasn't following.
Do you have this map on, that we can put on the wall so it knows what we're talking about?
I don't know. 4 Maples on there, it's on the stick drive. Close that out. What are you doing?
We were both using the,
Oh.
Mouse fight.
No, the next one, remediation. There it is.
Remediation.
oops, it's not gonna, it's not gonna let me do that. Oops. Now, what do you ask? me?
Okay, you can see where the stone wall is, and there is a line that's long dash and then 2 short dashes and then another long dash.
Right underneath.
Yes.
Is that the old wetland line, or is that a wetland line? Is that the wetland line?
Is that like a building setback line? Is that the setback line you're talking about, or is
Well, there
that?
are flag numbers that are
Which
close
flag
to it. Is that the
Yeah,
wetland line?
that's the
That's the
wetland.
wetland
These-
line.
Isn't
these
that on the
little-
legend? You get,
These little check marks are on the line, then the number
Those
goes
were the
with it.
flag
Okay, I was
numbers.
getting it confused with the contour lines, and that was where I was running into difficulty. I apologize for my density. Right.
Okay?
Oh, yeah, the application is for site development. What are we developing?
No,
There's applications for site development also because what they're developing is they're proposing a driveway that comes out to
Okay.
the back.
Thank you. All right.
And that's one of the problems because the Planning and Zoning Commission requires does not allow, I should say, a gravel driveway access.
Tailings.
And tailings is even worse. They don't allow, well, tailings, you're saying,
Reclaim,
yeah, I'm thinking.
millings.
Millings. They don't allow non-paved, it has to be a hard surface for a driveway access. And so we've asked them to come in, so we can talk to them about coming up with something that complies with zoning. And I've discussed this with the property owner a number of times already.
okay. Okay.
Well, now the engineer's involved, so.
Right.
And make it all work. Okay, so I guess what, do we need a motion to, or are we just gonna go ahead and say, okay?
I
Anything
don't
else
think you
from the
need a
commission?
motion for, well, actually, it does
To do
have,
what?
it does have some development associated with it, but it is remediation, so I don't think you need it.
Okay, see you on the
Those are-
28th then, apparently.
Yes, those are the questions in addition to Scott's, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The next item on our agenda, did you want to look over this stuff?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay.
I thought I didn't have the plan, but I do.
This is all like historical stuff too, so if you want to look at it, but
Oh, it is?
this is everything. It's been going on for probably 2 years. Take a look, if you want,
I'll
take a
take a
look.
look, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Here, here's that. What's that gonna work? Okay, moving on to our next section of other. IWC 2014-09, 36 Timothy Hill Road, Section 6, 64 Cambridge Drive, 2 Independence Drive, New England Materials LLC. And we're here to discuss site stabilization permits. I believe we received a letter from Mr. John Kimball, who I see approaching the hot seat.
Hello, members of the commission. I'm John Kimball. I live at 1428 Monroe Turnpike here in Monroe, Connecticut.
You wanna put in a stick drive? Jim?
I've never done this before, so. By that, I didn't mean never stood up in front of the commission. I just meant.
You've just faded away.
What's that?
Oops. All right. This is going
Just
swim.
fried all of Monroe's computers. Success.
Okay, I'm done seeing. I could probably get the same, almost, the only thing, I have basically Google Earth with our property lines superimposed on them. We could probably go to Google Earth.
I think most of the commission is familiar with the area, right? With the
Yeah,
exception
but
of Mr.
I don't know, I mean,
Either-
I don't know
either-
which property 36 Timothy Hill is, but,
This is the whole move the
Yeah,
street.
that's a good
section.
start.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, these are the property lines of the overall Pepper Street Business Park, superimposed on an aerial. The road profile that you see here going up to Timothy Hill, the existing Timothy Hill ends here, Independence Drive ends here. This is the existing approved wetlands crossing and existing road and subdivision approval that we started construction on, and then our planning and zoning permit expired. So we've been back and forth on approval, reapproval on this, several times over the last 7 years, trying to figure out how to get, basically coming into the recession and trying to figure out how to get from this point up to this point. And the most recent wetlands application related to trying to change the alignment of bridges from a skewed bridge, which became very expensive, to a straight crossing, and we went through a whole bunch of things. The commission obviously didn't feel comfortable with the application. There was a number of things, I think, surrounding the application that weren't actually in the application that I think was part of the discomfort. Some of it was the proposed development for beachside. The other stuff was limits of clearing and getting proper survey and aerial information, and even to this point, in meeting with my engineers and surveyors. You know, I've commissioned them to go back out to the site and basically resurvey this area and the complete area from 64 Cambridge Drive all the way to Independence and then up to Timothy Hill, of any of the areas that we've disturbed, basically. So, they're going to be picking up this entire area with a focus on limits of clearing, wetland crossings, and then picking up this area here from the gate, from the New England Materials gate all the way, basically coming in around here, for two reasons. One, we're in conjunction, you know, we're sitting down with staff, looking at different things that are going on, and one of the things that we're going to be bringing in is, you know, restoration and site plan for this area here. So we're working on a survey for this. The question that you know, we began discussions with staff over, well, the first thing that you know, Scott asked was, in the master plan of the overall park, weren't we always extending out, you know, to Timothy Hill? Because we were talking about, now that we were hitting a roadblock on the bridges, changing gears and going to a driveway crossing, less impact, and doing you know, composting and more of a different type of use on this side, something that we could be more flexible and work around the wetlands and things like that, eliminate the road access connection between the two sites. There would still be an internal driveway, but you know, as you know, when we look at the confluence of the 750-foot setbacks on the vernal pools, there's like a box about this size right here that's outside of the review area, and everything else is covered in it. Now, I said to Scott and Will, you know, for us to develop the rest of this land here, you know, we've got a 65-foot grade change from here to here. So it's not, you know, and when we started in this process back in 2001, you know, our initial application was not for industrial, it was for, you know, a cluster of housing down here and open space. It was for 55 and older housing surrounding a golf course. It was for a bunch of different things that didn't relate to industrial development, because to do industrial development here takes, you know, you're basically cutting the tops off of mountains, and that's the only way. And we went down a number of different paths, and we kept getting no, no, no. We want the tax dollars, we want the ratables, we want the industrial development. So, you know, we began down that path, and we're, you know, I don't know, 3/4 of the way down the path now, and we've got the last, you know, crossings to cross, and then, you know, another, you know, area of land to basically change the contours of to make work for industrial development, unless the commission's got a different, you know, I mean, there's no reason for me to build a bridge. Obviously, if I get the permit for the bridge and I can't get the permit for the site development, you know, there's no reason to build a bridge, you know. So I, you know, I don't know if the road is is necessarily part of the concern. I know there's an, you know, one of the issues that was brought up is that our wetlands consultant believes that this wetland here is drying up a little bit. We originally felt that these wetlands were served primarily by the watershed coming downhill this way. We're thinking now at this point that there was a ridge line here, and certainly we were getting water coming into this wetland from this ridge line. We're prepared on a restoration plan to reestablish a grade that would then generate the water, and we put, obviously, you know, the proper water renovation systems in, and, you know, swales and plantings and things like that. But we're prepared to come in with a restoration plan that brings the site to an elevation where we can drain the water back into that wetland and restore the hydrology that was there prior to the development. So we're analyzing the pre any development watershed for this area, and looking at that from a hydrology standpoint. And but part of what I wanted to get feedback from the commission. I know that it's a lot. There's a lot of things going on here. It's a huge amount of development. We've got a lot of wetlands here. Things that we can offer from a not necessarily a compromise standpoint, but we can deed restrict and create a conservation easement on this corridor so that we try and maintain some of the corridor. We can make an easement on this portion of the corridor that we own, an easement around this portion of the corridor, something surrounding this portion. We can start looking at things, and I just wanted to try and get some feedback as we design the next iteration of this from the commission, before we, because it's very expensive to go through the process of engineering and pulling this stuff together. And I wanted to get some feedback from the commission as to what you're looking for, what types of analyses that you want us to do, and we'll bring in whatever consultants we need to to ensure that we're meeting the right standards, including offer outside consultant will reimburse the commission so that it can have a peer review of our data, so that we want to get this done and do it, do the rest of the development and do it right. We don't want to we're kind of hitting a little bit of a brick wall here, and I don't think the application, the crossing was necessarily the thing that brought us down in our last meeting. I think it was communication. So I'm here to open the door to the communication and see if we can deliver a better product for you and I'm inviting you to be as brutally honest as you need to be to convey your message to me, and I'll take some notes and tell me what what you're looking for and what you want.
You know what I need? I need to know where north is. Oh. I'm having a devil of a time trying to place myself here.
Question. I think I have to back up. How do I?
Let's go
I
to
think north
north.
might be that.
North is to the right
So,
side. of it.
yeah, north is here.
Oh, okay. So
Sorry.
that big wooded area was what you had brought in as part of the subdivision
Yes,
last time.
sorry, this area was, could have
That's where
oriented better.
the
This is
swath
Timothy
has
Hill.
been cut through.
This was the
Okay.
this
Oh,
was the previously approved wetland
Now.
delineation.
all right.
In the last application, that road was moved
We
to right,
straightened it
yes?
out, basically brought it through here.
Okay.
All right.
It was closer
Thank
to
you.
this,
Boy, I could not
this
place
wetland
myself.
here. And went straight across, so it kind of curved here and went straight across this way.
Where was the soccer field
The
proposed?
soccer field was up here.
Okay.
Let me just clarify where we are right now, so you have a little bit better idea of what needs to be done. So he received the approval on this piece of road. So from Timothy Hill to Independence, this piece of road, this is the subdivision right here.
Mhm.
All right, and this was the layout originally approved by the commission. There's an inland wetlands approval, and that approval is still valid. He's still valid on the approval. However, the planning and zoning approval for that piece of roadway has now lapsed. So what happened is the state statutes allow an applicant to post a site stabilization and restoration bond. And once they post that bond, he posted his wetlands bond that you required, and then he posted the site stabilization and restoration bond only, and that was for planning and zoning, and that allows him to start the work. He has to then post the performance bond and file the subdivision plan on the land records to proceed. That part of it never happened, all right? So his P and Z approval has lapsed, and so therefore, he doesn't have the ability to move forward. In the interim, he came in with a revised plan that moved, if you remember, moved the road over a little bit, and as he indicated, it got rid of the skewed arrangement for the two bridges and made the bridges straighter and less expensive. And it also changed the lots in here so that he had a larger lot and he was hoping to get the soccer field. You guys had some negative comments on that, and you were asking him to bring in more information. And it mainly was information about, hey, you know, we went out there, we see this big corridor of land that's been cleared, and we see stumps sitting in the middle of the wetland area. Some of that was obviously in the area where they were gonna cross for the bridge. But now there's no approval, so he's in a position where he has to stabilize and restore the property, or come in very quickly with an alternate plan to develop this land and get an approval so he doesn't have to do that.
Or the third option is to just go back to planning and zoning with this.
The original
The
and get it
original road
reinstated.
and pursue, and get a reapproval on the exact approved plan. We've already been through.
Because he doesn't have to come back to wetlands.
It's all
to
signed
restore.
off and I can go that road, but, you know, so if there's three options, I can restore it and leave it, which isn't really a feasible option for me. I can come back with the roads, you know, re-skewed, but address more concerns. I can eliminate the road, and we can look at, you know, one of the businesses that we're looking to start involves leaf composting and other things, and we would be willing to make this a internal site drive for a composting facility where we would do leaf composting and things of that nature. Now we need also, you know, not just zoning approval, wetland approval, and the DEP approval. So it's a much bigger process, but it's another alternative. So we've got a few different alternatives out there, and I'm trying to get an initial read on direction and/or you know, what are your hot button concerns so I can start looking at them. Again, other than north, which is
Now this should solve that issue for me, thank you, yes. Ooh, tough one.
So.
I think, I mean, there was a number of issues on the last go-around, right? And I think one of the major ones being the vernal pool situation up here, right?
Yep,
Am I remembering correctly?
yes, you are.
The complicating factor is that this, as you had mentioned, you know, maybe is your last piece that you're connecting, and it's probably maybe the most sensitive, only from the standpoint of the concentration and quantity of vernal pools that you have in this little block is significant to the point where, you know, you were doing your 750-foot kind of setbacks, and it puts you a little circle.
Right.
Now, you know, just myself, I don't always look at 750 concentric, a circle that's just concentric around these and say that's what you have to protect. There is better management measures to use that are just those circles that a good scientist could work with you, understanding what's out there, and maybe come up with some kind of solid vernal pool management plan to protect the pool envelope, and, you know, the species and those kind of migratory routes that those species use to get to their terrestrial habitat, which is for most of the year. And you have, what, 6 or 7 of them in this area, so it makes it tough.
Yeah, I know, we have one here, and then an embedded vernal pool here, something here, something here. I mean, this one, you know, I don't know, one fairy shrimp egg. That one's still up in the air for me. I mean, I go there 2 days after it rains. There's no water, but I understand they hatch in 24 hours. These are quick acting fairy shrimp, you know, but it's that one, you know. So, you know, this was and, you know, all kidding aside, I mean, this was the one, this was the thing that we were, with the bridge crossing, we were most closely coming in contact with.
I thought it was the other, is there one, I guess it's east, keep going,
Here?
east,
Oh, east.
yeah, right there,
This
where you
one?
had, no, go
this
back up, next to it looks like that wetland corridor crossing,
Oh,
up there, then to the left, right down,
right
what's
here.
that thing?
Probably a piece of
Oh,
equipment.
this is a detention basin, proposed detention basin, I think.
Okay, I thought there was a vernal pool right in that corridor of
No, you're
wetlands
thinking
too.
of that one he pointed to before.
No,
That's
this
Yeah,
is,
right
this
there.
is, this
that
was
was
the
vernal pool 3.
This
Three?
was,
Yeah,
Oh, that's
that was
3, okay.
yeah.
this was a sensitive one. I mean, if you, you know, it's leaflet, or you can hardly tell.
Now, I think it used to be different until, I think it's changed a lot
I've walked that
over
one
the
for
years.
100 years. Like, I have
100
pictures of.
years? You remember going
No,
to
but
that?
like for 15 years I've looked at it. I have pictures of me, because originally when I went out and said, you freaking flagged this as a wetland, I took a picture of the day after a storm, a picture of the newspaper back then, to, you know, because we didn't have timestamps, a photograph of it and the wetland, and complained that, I said, just because you don't like pricker bushes doesn't mean you shouldn't go in and actually check the soils and the thing, you know, but it just, and I understand wetland soils doesn't mean it's a pond. It can have, you know, can be a field and be a wetland.
Well,
You know.
well, this, you'll go maybe April through
Yeah.
June, and then you won't see it again.
Oh, you won't see
The
it.
water.
April. You won't see
Right.
it in 3 days in April consistently. You know, like, you'll see it after a 1-inch storm for 36 hours, and it'll evaporate.
Well, and
Yeah.
this also goes back to
But getting-
hiring a good scientist.
To your point, to
yeah.
bring in, I think that's, you know, your point hit home, and bring in a specialist for vernal pools to study
I think that's important on this.
the habitat, not just do a statistical map that says, I've got a 300-acre pine swamp, and so percentage-wise,
Or just say
You know.
that, they reviewed the previous report that was done,
right,
which, whatever, doesn't really address today's conditions compared to
Right.
whatever years ago. And just kind of agreeing with that, the amount of disturbance throughout that corridor, I think what was part of the, I don't want to say, I don't know if it's miscommunication or not, between what we were trying to convey is the amount of disturbance that's out there wasn't being restored to say, because your application at that time had said that there's no direct wetland impacts, permanent directed wetland impacts. When, if you go by what's out there and what has been done and what you are proposing, you would have ended up with direct wetland impacts, because the work that you were doing under the existing permit would not have been brought back to square one, if you will.
okay.
And so the concern was that you weren't restoring what you had disturbed, and you didn't need to disturb that anymore with the modification. And so you weren't, with that, there was no restoration there. I'm just trying to pick through my memory, going back.
Yeah. It's okay.
Okay.
Now, it seems to me, you brought before us once before the concept of making those two corridor, so to speak, the
Yep.
two wetland corridors into a conservation
Right.
easement. I seem to remember having a conversation with you at
Yep.
one point about that. I think that sounds like a great idea, rather than pigeonholing, little development here and there and everywhere, which just fragments everything.
Right.
And that is a major corridor between the pine swamp and whatever it is that's in the other direction.
Right. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, there's the town land here.
That's right, it's town
Obviously,
land over
this is
there.
all town, and then on the other side of the town land is Aquarian watershed land. And
So
then
that would be,
And then the Great Pine Swamp is here, so we can really provide a good linkage between the two.
Mhm.
And the bridges help facilitate that in terms of crossings and things,
Right.
It would clear span it so you could cross, so.
If you're thinking about, easements, that could be rolled into what your biologist might look at for protecting lands for the vernal pools too.
Migrating areas,
Right.
right, yeah, that's kind of.
the leaf composting thing you're talking about,
Yeah.
how big a process, how many acres, I realize it's conceptual, but how many acres or so do you conceive of it being?
It would probably be roughly 15 or 20 acres. So, from an area standpoint, it would go basically, from, in here is what it would take
Okay.
up. from
Now, would this be
space.
solely leaf composting, and would it be manure composting and
We're-
that kind of
we're-
stuff?
We have, we're looking at wood recycling, but that's primarily for this side, like a wood yard, wood recycling, stump grinding, and things like that over here. The organics that come off of that process, we wanted to compost, and we're thinking that composting we could better manage the composting on a separate site, which would be all composting. So manure composting has other issues that we would need to address in terms of detaining all the tannins and things like that, and so
Well, that's why I asked the
problem
question.
is
because-
with trying to do manure composting here, we would be, it may not be the appropriate location because of trying to get water to go, continue to go into the wetland. We've got to pond the water related to the manure
Mhm.
composting. But, we did design a pad scenario where we would potentially put the manure with do either a concrete or asphalt floor, hoop houses, and have no stormwater runoff. It would run off the paved surface around the composting facility, the manure. If we did manure composting, and talking to Joe Wetterman at DEP, he said the most efficient way and best way to deal with it from their standpoint is to enclose it, because then we're dealing with clean water runoff instead of manure tannin runoff. We can much easier manage the drying and moisture content of the compost. So that's something we are looking at. So
Okay, so we're not just talking leaf composting, we're talking about
but it would be
a much broader variety.
yeah. So leaves would probably potentially be this area. Manure would potentially be. We did a layout in this area, but again, that's it's in the conceptual phase. Although it's been in the conceptual phase for a couple of years now. We've had meetings with DEP. We've been kicking this thing around since 2009 with DEP, but now, the soccer field deal, I already refunded their deposit because I didn't feel that we could, I thought that we would be, would be able to put it here, but, with the potential impacts, the vernal pool, the lighting and other issues, it just doesn't, it's like putting a square peg in a round hole, and I didn't want to force it, so, I basically,
Wouldn't that be great in the quarry, though?
well, it could potentially, but that's, the problem is it's not enough of a use to take up that whole piece of land, so only to take a fraction of it up, and then, what industrial use goes next to it, and is it gonna be compatible with soccer? So that's really the big, that's why they liked being here, because it was remote from everything else, but, we'll see. So that's out at this point. So now, what I'm trying to figure out is if we reanalyze the road, do we bring the road back in and do the lots? I mean, ultimately, other than, it's hard to see it exactly, but in some of the areas, like where we've, it's obviously evolving, but in areas like, here where we've got a bridge, two bridges here, and the areas on both sides of the bridge, it came back to a very natural state at the end, post-construction. Same thing with the bridge that we did crossing a wetland over here. It came back to, not a lot of invasives, came back to a very natural state. There's another bridge, kind of, I don't know, in their area somewhere. Same thing. The bridge, the bridge came back, not, didn't. There's definitely some, maintenance issue related to that with, this crossing, but it's, I think we've got some like Russian olive and other stuff growing down there that, but, that would have to be looked at. This one came back nice here, and this one came back really nice. So, so I know that post-construction, the bridge, the area where the bridge is crossing will come back, and honestly, some of these areas that we block off from development by putting a building there that's industrial, they're going to end up being better off than they are if it's a residential development, because they don't have the cats and the dogs and the animals and everything else in them. So once the site gets built and they put the fence up and edge the parking lot, it's basically the wetlands kind of forgotten habitat. So I don't think that it will be in the town's. It wouldn't be in. I think it would be in the town's best interest to have the road go all the way through. But if we're objecting to that, then a lesser width road with smaller crossings and and to do it as a drive.
So you don't want to go with the original approval anymore?
The original approval, I mean, well, my original bridges, the invoice on them was $87,000 per span. The new bridge on the skewed crossing came in each bridge at like $500,000. Man, that was true.
Yeah. Good luck to that now, sir.
So, every foot, when you're doing a clear span, is it still working?
No. Stopped.
It's definitely a power surge.
Well, we might be on the generator now.
Power
Oh,
outage.
You were right, earlier you said you just,
You
Mr.
said-
Kimball, you zapped
you
all
just-
the power.
I just sucked all the power. We should be all right, John, thank you.
All right. So,
All right, so I guess
All right.
what we're, I mean, not to
not to belabor it.
not to belabor it or beat any sort of dead animal at this point.
I like what Jeff said about, looking
Bring in-
into a professional that can look at the entire thing and, propose the best
Plan.
things. One of the things that concerns me about the road, and I mentioned this in the hearings, and it's from my point of view, which is a little bit skewed toward the animal life, and that is, this creates a crosstown cutout. You can actually get from Fan Hill to Pepper Street, which you could never do before easily. And so I think it would be more used than you realize, as soon as people realize that it's there. And if the road exists, that's fine, but I would like to see something provided so that the vernal crossings are not total carnage. Because the quantity of salamanders and frogs and the other life does affect the long-term life and health of the vernal pools. So if you wipe out a great deal of it in car carnage, we are going to affect the long-term health.
I mean, that was, I think, one of my major concerns is you're right, you had the two vernal pools, and you needed a certain amount of area for these little critters, and they showed an area, but boy, those critters had to cross a road, walk around 3 buildings, and walk up a half mile and over 12 miles, and it didn't make any sense.
The corridors didn't work.
And how
that
did
they were
they,
talking
how did
about.
they know where to go?
Signage.
So that there are
They're
different,
homing salamanders.
some
no.
that can read road maps.
Yeah, no, but I think both of those go back into the migratory patterns and looking at which direction might they definitely want to go.
Yeah, where they want to go.
Yep,
So I think that's a really good starting point
Okay.
moving forward
Absolutely.
here.
all right. And
Depending on your timing of all this, you're getting into the right season to have somebody go out and look, and it could do, with the amount of vernal pools that you have out here for, that area, to actually do a vernal pool study, which I don't really think a complete one's been done before, other than going out and making some observations. And,
yeah, we've had.
Yeah, they did.
but was there dip netting and?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, they came down to quantities of egg masses.
Okay.
So, but that was that's like 2000, wasn't it?
Oh, no, we
When,
did them recently. We did it.
Michael
we did it.
Klein first did it?
We did it again. I mean, Mike.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they
you've
did
done
and
it
then did
substantively,
again,
but the
and then we
first
had
one.
Jen Benno in just to do an exploratory path through. But yeah, I mean, it's been, we've got 5 or 6 different studies of these areas at different times of the year, and at least 4 in the spring. But obviously we're hitting another ideal period of time. So if I sign somebody up now, they'll be able to, I can give them all the other studies, they can
Right.
read through them, and then hit this thing and do a really comprehensive study and get, a good concise presentation with traffic patterns, migratory patterns, and deal with the real issues and say, okay, this area, contrary to what you think from a common sense standpoint, this is really where they're gonna go, because I don't really know where a salamander's gonna go, I think I do, but I'm sure there's somebody that will figure it out. All right.
But I appreciate the fact that you're looking at the whole parcel, instead of, having us do it piecemeal, and it's, I don't know, just opens up a lot more communication lines as far as I'm concerned, so I appreciate this.
Anything else that anybody has as a critical issue that you want us to look at?
Not at the moment.
I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball, appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking the time for this. I know,
Good luck.
it's
Well,
not
we'll
an
just
easy
see what you
thing.
bring in.
Yeah, we'll do our best to bring something that's gonna work, you know?
Susan.
All right, so moving right along on our agenda here, I think the only deliberations. So we have, what, 2 things to deliberate on tonight? So we should start with the recommendation to road. If you all remember, this is the very unusual situation that they are actually asking for a negative deferral. I say we give it to them.
Yes,
That's
Is there
on recommendation.
Any opposition to me, my opinion in there?
No.
Okay, so can we, is this one of those ones where we just say it, or?
No, it is, I think you can dictate what you want to say and we can just do it. I don't think you need a draft in this case.
No, and I think that,
Can you,
if we can go back and, I think, when Mr. Shamus over here was asking for clarification, I think he very eloquently put what we were trying to accomplish, right?
Tried to.
So what do we want to negatively refer? What do we want to reference in the letter to P and Z? Why we don't like this plan for subdivision?
The,
We could say a lot.
well, we need to say a lot, actually. We need to pretty much like lay it all out.
And if you are uncomfortable with that, if you want to go the draft route, that's certainly doable too. So I didn't mean to push you. I don't want to make it sound like I'm pushing you.
What are we discussing?
I don't think we need a draft.
Barn Hill.
I think we,
Oh,
you know,
Barney,
need
why
to
are you looking
start
at
off with
me?
saying it's a significant impact activity.
Which one? Oh,
Oh, wait.
Yeah,
that's why I can't find what I'm looking for.
I still think we should do this during, so we don't forget and have to remember.
I know, but
Yes.
that's,
I don't know why we don't do that.
that will have to be, this is right. Scott, he's the one who changed it in the first place.
Oh.
Initially, he brought his old, from his old job,
Mm.
he brought those procedures, and I guess there's a, whatchamacallit. My husband types in that the alien craft was seen leaving from Wolf Park, and that's why we had the power glitch.
We'll,
Yeah,
so we're talking about why what we're gonna put in that letter, right? So,
correct.
Scott's got the right file now, so.
okay, so fire away, commission.
Listen, the,
Do you wanna bring up the
Disturbance.
map? Do you wanna bring up the plan?
Scott, help us out.
Maybe
What
it'll
are
jog
our
people's,
concerns?
jog people's,
disturbance was far too extensive.
I think we start to say it's a significant impact activity, and one, there weren't enough alternatives. They haven't followed the state's policy of avoidance, minimization, and mitigation. There was no mitigation on this
Wait a minute,
project.
so the
All right,
first
let me
one is
write
not
that
enough
down, too.
alternatives. Second is what?
Not following the state's policy of avoidance, minimization, and mitigation. Another that I'll bring up and maybe put it
Well,
on
the
the record.
mitigation part isn't really P and Z's issue, I don't think.
No, but that's ours.
It is ours, but this is strictly the referral to P and Z.
Yeah, but
No,
they could
it's
still-
your
it's still
issue.
part of our
Okay.
reasons.
All right, it is one of our issues,
yeah,
you're right.
and I would say that the shape of the lot and the location of the wetlands,
The configuration.
and the requirement for road frontage, makes the subdivision require, too much impervious area,
And it also,
for
this is a tough one because there's a lot of factors
There's
involved.
also,
lots, I mean.
yeah, there's a conflict with the wetland delineation from a previous one that was submitted, I think it was back in the 80s, to what we are showing on the current plan.
Yep, so a conflict with wetland delineation that was not fully clarified.
Correct. And for the commission's benefit, the detention basin where that, that lobe is on the east side, adjacent to the cul-de-sac, that continues down off of the site. So there is no break. They're showing an isolated wetland there, a pocket wetland. The soil scientist report, if you look at it,
It includes in this
it
area.
includes a wetland all through there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And it was done,
How long ago? This is the one they're using now or
So-
years ago?
so in the soil scientist report, he did a sketch map. And on that sketch map, he used the base map from, I think, the 80s.
Oh,
And I have to believe that a soil scientist did that because not only are there symbols on there, but there's symbols for soil types. And the soil types are upland and wetland, and there's wetland soils that were indicated right through that swath. So where they're proposing essentially is wetlands,
That's true. If
By
you
lot
look at
three.
that lobe, it's truncated at the bottom by a straight line.
right? And
So
it
you
just-
think it was a drawing error
No, I think, no, then the soil scientist redid it and did it like this,
or the same one or a different one?
a different soil scientist.
Oh.
Mm.
So he just cut off that wetland, but on the plan that he used, he used the plan that
Jeez.
showed,
Oh, so it needs to be,
previous
it needs
wetland.
to be looked
so
at
there
again.
needs to be clarification as
Mm.
to what's what.
Good catch.
The detention basin took up practically all of the upland review along the river.
There's-
That was
yeah,
my,
the
that was
upland
one of
review
my
area,
big one.
the upland review area on this site,
Yeah, there's,
Is being, yeah, 100% disturbed.
just about.
and since when do they consider a detention basin open space? I don't think of it as being open space. but that's what
Well,
they're
it is, I
calling
think
it.
it's,
Meets the
in
definition, I
zoning,
think.
in zoning,
Yeah.
world,
Really?
it probably is along those
Mm.
lines.
Not very good open space.
What are we missing, Scott? Are we missing
So
anything?
you've got not enough alternatives presented, not following the state policy of avoiding the wetland crossings and providing mitigation for same. Is that what,
Not following the state's policy of avoiding impacts,
avoiding?
minimizing impacts, and then compensating for those minimized impacts.
Not following the state policy for avoiding impacts, minimizing impacts, and compensation
For the minimized impacts.
for the. Okay.
The swale going down.
Shape of the lots and locations of the wetlands requires too much impervious area. Conflict with wetland delineation was not clarified for the commission's benefit. Detention basins, the detention basin used up essentially all of the upland review area, leaving very little buffer. I think you want to focus a little bit more on the lot layout, to
Yeah, I'm
indicate that
working
the
on that
lot
one.
layout is not,
The-
does not appear to be,
It's not practical.
it's not practical.
And, well, to start with, it, because of the way the wetland, the upper wetland bisects the area, they were forcing us into a corner if the property owners did not agree to keep the easement forever for the driveway. It would have forced us into allowing some kind of a wetland crossing. I don't know how to state that.
Yeah, hold that
in
thought
English.
for a minute,
Okay.
but you're saying lot layout is not practical relative to the minimizing wetland impacts.
Sure.
Right, impervious surface and wetland.
Okay, now, the next thing you're talking about is you're talking about this easement that, one of the lots
Actually, all
the
three of them.
entire
That
frontage,
driveway easement is always gonna,
yeah.
someone just takes one to say, I'm not letting them drive anymore. You know.
Right, so you're saying one of the lots.
Access to far
Literally, the
lot.
whole frontage of one of the lots is wetlands.
Basically, yeah. Mhm.
The cul-de-sac also takes up all the space as they
Yeah.
push that down, then they're like touching the wetlands on either side, so they're always gonna be messing into either wetlands.
So forcing the use of what's the word I want?
Easement,
But I was gonna use an adjective there,
Oh.
using a something easement.
mutual,
Uh,
mutually consented.
No, I was gonna say,
consensual.
something to say difficult to enforce, how do I want to say that?
An easement that's difficult to enforce.
I'll just say dot, I'll figure it out. And then what,
The
you said something
swale.
about the cul-de-sac, the cul-de-sac and the road infrastructure takes up too much, road infrastructure. Size or extent is not practical, given the degree of needed wetland impact in comparison to the amount of lots provided. Something like that.
If you work it out so it makes sense, yeah. 'Cause right now it doesn't.
I'm trying to,
No, I know you're thinking as you're doing, you'll know what you're talking about, so.
so how do you want me to do this? We just do the letter, the
Now, wait a
chairman
minute, we're
signs
not
it?
done
or-
yet.
No,
More.
okay, right.
That swale down the back of the whole
Yeah.
border is extremely impractical, especially in light of the fact that lot number 3 would have to maintain it, and there's no way in the face of the planet that he would.
It's not a, lot 3, it just doesn't have a usable yard space, so it's gonna create a problem. I don't know how you say that, but.
Lot 3 is worthless.
Yeah, lot 3 is definitely worthless. And I wouldn't want, because that swale is gonna be conveying all the water, not just from the 2 houses above it, but the entire hill behind it. It's gonna be, that's not gonna be a swale, it's gonna be a river.
In the springtime, that's gonna be
Yeah.
really.
So lot 3 does not have a usable yard area without encroachment into regulated, into wetland areas.
And it would be impossible to police, because that swale would be on his property, it would be impossible for us to police it. I can't imagine.
And remember,
What
you want to
disaster
keep
would
it a little bit general. These are referral comments to, otherwise theoretically, P and Z would get, kind of overwhelmed by. You
Well,
just
they
want-
get the idea that we weren't happy with it.
Yeah. And remember, in this case, planning and zoning probably isn't even gonna get the referral. They're gonna go to ZBA and do something different before they even get the P and Z, so.
Then that's probably enough.
Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
can we
fine.
put in there that he requested, as per his request?
As per.
That's kind of.
Well, that makes it sound like we weren't gonna do it.
It's on the
anyway.
record, we have it on the record.
Okay.
Yeah. But also, I think this perhaps would be better as a 2-lot subdivision, not a 3.
I wouldn't even
You
talk
don't-
about
you don't-
numbers,
you
don't
wouldn't
even
say
talk
that.
about numbers.
Okay.
Because,
All right, never mind.
the direction it's going, it's possible it could end up as 1.
Oh, I see, okay. That would be better.
Yeah, I think he was saying that, he was like, just making one more driveway coming off of the original cul-de-sac
and building one up at the.
Yeah, if
up
they
at
get
the top.
if they get the variance,
Yeah.
they can build one driveway coming off to one house, or
They don't even have to build a
Well,
road.
why would they need a variance to build one house?
because they don't
Frontage.
have the lot frontage. There's only 50 feet on Lois Lane. It's not enough to
You mean
build.
Robin Lane?
Lois Lane,
What did I say? What did I say?
Lois Lane, yeah.
Well, we do have a Lois, what is it,
We have a,
Lois Drive?
we have
is it?
Lois something, yeah.
We have a violation.
Okay, all right,
All
All
right,
right, we're good.
so there we go.
that's fine.
So be it.
Sounds
All
good.
right, so I'm gonna write
So
up
we can
the
stuff
letter,
in the-
chairman signs it, and you're okay with that, that
We
you
know
were
it's gonna be
pretty
different.
descriptive.
Yeah, if
with
you want
it.
to send it to me, and just to double,
Send it to
make
both.
sure I understand it.
All right, sounds good.
The next time.
Right.
All right, fantastic.
So do we have to vote on this? Or are we
No,
vote on the
no, that
draft?
was
Never
it.
mind,
Referral.
never mind.
No, we're not doing a draft.
No, this
he's
is
just
just a
doing
it.
referral.
You know what,
This isn't-
I'm not
You're
entirely
right.
positive, I think you should vote on it to,
But we can't vote on it until we get a draft.
oh, that's what I was asking you.
Oh,
I
okay.
was
Well, I
saying, do
think
you
we
want me
hammered
to
it out
do it?
enough.
No, I think-
Yeah,
I
let's
think we'll
just
go
take
with
care
it.
of business. It's your work, so go right ahead.
Make a motion to, send the referral letter
Negative referral.
and, to planning and zoning.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Shamus, a second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? So be it. Motion passes unanimously. Moving right along, 50 Cambridge Drive. So we are talking about the tanks that are already there, and then the new storage
Shed.
shed for chemicals. That is gonna be the first of 1,000.
I'll take a stab at it. I move that we approve, what is it, their application? Or their modification? Which one was it?
There's an
I
application.
think it's an
It's an
application.
Their application
Yeah.
to install the tanks in the storage shelter with the conditions that they provide locks on the drains for the tanks and the doors for the storage shelter.
We want a maintenance
As-
schedule for the tanks?
As well, provide,
You said there wasn't any from the manufacturer.
will
Mm.
provide
Let's
a
make sure the
written,
spigots are
written
open.
schedule for inspection of the tanks. And do
Getting
we
all the
want him
stuff.
to provide some sort of a review on the potential of a leak detection system? Or
Well, if that's the case, then we can't approve it, right?
Well, we can have Scott do that.
What did you just say, what do you want?
Leak detection system, like the
I want him
alarming.
to look into it. to
Yeah, he's
see-
gonna
to
look into
See if it's something that.
Well,
know.
you want them to provide a alarm or leak detection system.
Well, I don't necessarily want it, I mean, it depends how
If it's
feasible it
possible.
is.
Yeah, it might
Yeah.
not.
Investigate it.
Mm.
Well,
I get
mean,
the
you-
impression that he would be
That's,
honest.
that's
about
kind
it.
of difficult to leave up to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he pretty much made it clear
We
his
either have-
position that, sounds to me like they run a process a day, and then they're either getting, they expect a certain yield, and if it's a few milliliters or grams or whatever they're measuring, they don't care, but if it's a gallon, they realize there's an issue.
Okay,
But,
anything else people?
and I think if it does leak, it goes into those tanks. So,
So you're saying you don't want the requirement of
well, how are we gonna, I
Well, he
mean,
said,
he said he would look into it, he wasn't sure if it was feasible.
We either have to approve without it or with it, and I think that's the way.
Okay, so you recommend leak detection or alarm system if practical.
Sure.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
mm,
Google it.
Anyone else got anything interesting?
I think that's about it.
That's it.
no, that's it.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so you want the drains in each tank to include locks,
Which he agreed to.
and you want the drains, you want the doors in the storage shelter to also include locks,
As agreed.
as offered. and you want them to provide written schedule for inspection of tanks, and you want that, and you're recommending that they provide a leak detection system or alarm system if practical. Then,
We do want a schedule for inspection? Is that what we're
I think
asking?
that's a good thing. They put that on the drawing, that there's a O&M plan for
Yeah,
inspection.
we
Oh,
should see
okay, well
that.
then
We
it's
should
on
get
the
it.
I
plan.
thought he said
Great.
there was not,
No, he said there was a monthly
No.
one, they had a monthly inspection
Yeah.
thing that they were
And
doing.
they
Okay.
typically will
I misheard that.
write that. All right, so I don't, under my technical, 1, you don't need, 2, you don't need, you did, 3, you don't need, I'm good, so, and I said no bond either.
Scott, you were okay with, there not being pads underneath those?
Yeah, I mean, they put, if they have adequate, crushed stone, you can put, the tanks don't weigh much, and it's not a continuous weight sitting on there.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
All right. So,
We need a second?
I
do we have a
second it.
motion? Who made the motion?
Jim?
Jim made the motion.
Okay. And,
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Evers made the, I think Clark already
Oh,
made the
did-
second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving right along. Inland, no time extensions, no bond release, reduction or reports. Inland Wetland Agent Activities Report, anything, Scott?
Nope.
Enforcement,
No,
administrative review, general discussion, other.
Yes. I had a meeting with, I threw out my, my draft, and I forget the woman's name, Barbara, woman from the Conservation Commission, who actually was very informative and very much into stormwater quality control and public outreach and all that stuff. And I thought that it would really benefit the commission, your commission, to establish your committee and meet with her, because what she's saying.
Team up for public outreach.
Yeah, she's saying that the Conservation Commission is able and willing to do some of your public outreach. And we need that done for our MS4 permit as well.
Oh.
So, if, I'd really like to put you guys together. I mean, she reminded me of you, Lois. She had the same ideas and
Pretty.
energy, et cetera. And
I didn't say anything.
Thank you. Sweet.
so, I really would like you guys to consider just quickly making
I think it's a great idea.
Fantastic.
committee, and then you could meet, and, you know, you could do it, I could do it as well with you, and we could meet and maybe get them off and running on some of that stuff. She's got some good ideas, and I think that it would be a great partnership for you guys to start working with the Conservation Commission.
Mhm.
Excellent
I'll do it.
idea.
All right, so Lois and I don't know who else wants to do it.
I'll be happy to do it, I just am never gonna be able to do it during the week, during the day.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say. Anybody?
I understand.
Is anybody else available to do it during the day?
I can, depends, but yes.
All right, so, I don't think we're talking much.
We
here.
can probably do a lot by email too.
Yeah, I mean, I
we
think
need
you only
to.
have to meet maybe certainly once to get started, and then, I don't know how many times to. I've got some information for the MS4 that I wanna feed them once we put it together, so. But I think it really would be a benefit, so maybe we can have Donna set something up.
Mhm.
When's the best time for you?
Mornings.
Fridays?
Fridays.
Fridays could be good.
Fridays, we're here till 1:30,
Right.
so Friday morning?
Mornings,
Mhm.
Early morning?
Yeah,
it's fine,
it's good for
whatever.
me.
Okay. All right, so we'll try to set something.
Okay. As far as, next is correspondence, I just have a question. I got, in our packet was that letter from, Secor Cassidy and McFarland, PC Attorneys at Law, in regards to the, Monroe property. Are we just not discussing that letter today? Was that just for us to look at, or?
You know, I haven't really
you were
digested
on it,
yet.
so I
Okay, I didn't know if, like, if it was something we had to, they're
Last-
making, I mean, this
last
guy's
meeting
making
you asked-
demands that we take action.
Last
Well,
meeting,
we
you
did.
asked me to issue a citation, and it hasn't gone out yet.
Okay.
And we're down
All right.
on this stuff
So it's just for informational purposes.
at this point.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, I mean,
But,
I've,
or I should say, talking about the Mondo thing, why don't we have that, somewhere as a continuing item?
it's a citation.
So it
So
was
what?
pending,
We have enforcement stuff.
No, I took it off because it was going to citation.
well, what's gonna happen, it goes to citation. When it goes to citation, she's gonna ask them to give her a schedule, and then it comes back on in your agenda.
It's, to me, it's still pending, and it's it's an enforcement action. So we
Okay,
don't
all right.
lose sight of it, and then when it comes back, it comes off of that and goes
Yeah, I
back on the
think we
agenda.
can keep it on there. I think it would be a good idea.
It just is a reminder, and
Yep,
also the public sees what's going on,
Yep.
that it's still on there. Especially in light of the letter.
yep, we can do that.
Okay, Jim?
Okay, I
Make a
have
motion to adjourn.
I have a fantastic motion
I heard
by
it.
Commissioner Ingres. Do I have a
Clark
second?
beat, did Clark beat it?
Clark beat it.
Jim,
I was told
Jimmy?
we were talking correspondence there.
second? I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.